Great. All right, welcome everyone. This is the Livingston City Commission meeting for February 20th. My clock says 5:31 p.m. Roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
Here.
Vice Chair Newts,
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Lyons,
Here.
Commissioner Willich, here. You have quorum.
Thank you. So first, folks, we're going to start out with public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight. So this will be for any public comment you'd like to make for things that are not included on our agenda. I will remind folks that individuals are reminded that public comment should be limited to items over which the city commission has supervision,
Do you want me to take these out?
control, or advisory power. Folks online, we're going to go ahead and mute everyone so that we're not disturbing each other. I'll also let folks know that public comment is always timed and you'll have 4 minutes to make a public comment. And we have a timer here that will let you know when you hit that point. I'm also going to remind folks tonight that any comments that you make, we need to keep comments civil and on topic. And no personal attacks are permitted in public comments. So let's go ahead and start with public comments for items not on the agenda. And we're going to start with folks in the room, and then we'll go online. So come on up to the front. Lindy will show the way here. When you make a public comment, please give your name, your full name, and your address. And then you can sign in at the podium.
I'm Lindy Gibson, and I wanted to comment on our present swimming pool. I know that I'm excited about all the development going on in Livingston and stuff, and I know we're going to be voting on the Recplex at the Katie Bonnell Park pretty soon. But I would like, and if I'm understanding right, there's a plan for 2 swimming pools. But I would like to see our current pool that all dug out and redone. I know it's limping. But when I look at, and I'm kind of involved with the low income population in our community, the children, and a lot of them spend a lot of time at the Civic Center and at the skate park. And our present pool is an excellent centralized location. And I don't know what the fees are going to be when we open the Recplex, but I know this is affordable. And I would like to have the city consider, or whoever is in charge of doing this, I don't understand everything, consider taking out our pool and rebuilding it so we have at least one that is centralized and familiar with all the children. When I look at the school age population in our community, well, the majority of our schools are obviously on Miles Park, you know, down there. And I'd like us to really consider doing that. We have a lot of low income children. I don't know how familiar you are with L'Esprit. We have a lot of at-risk children there. Excuse me. And Park County has the highest suicide rate among teens. And I think with all the money coming in and all the wonderful things that are being done, we can't lose sight of the low-income children and their ability to access the swimming pool. Not everybody can go over to the other side. Some have 2 parents working, some are low-income, single-parent homes. And I just have a sense that it's crucial that we keep our current swimming pool and redo it, even if we have to do without it for one summer because of the low-income children. I think we need to keep them as far as a priority in our decision making. I know what it meant to me growing up, standing in line with my dime. We were low income, and what it meant to go swimming every day. And by the end of summer, my hair was green from all the chlorine in the water. And I mean, you know, you've heard the expression, we were so poor, the mice had to eat next door. We were so poor, the mice never made it next door. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
But really, it's very serious. I'm sorry I'm so emotional about it, but it's really serious.
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else in the room for public comment? Items not on the agenda?
Hi, Brian Monahan, 711 East Lewis. I want to thank you guys for the meeting, the last meeting 2 weeks ago. On the crisis response teams. I was a little disappointed the second Tuesday, though. We'd organized a group of a half dozen people from the resource community to go and participate with the second Tuesday meeting of the crisis response team, and we called beforehand to verify the time, and we're told that there weren't enough members, and so that the meeting had been canceled. What you guys are doing is transformative, changing how we respond to crisis. And I've spent a lot of time interacting with people in crisis, having been in crisis before. There are members of this community who are eager to step up and rise to the occasion and be of service. We will have half a dozen people for this next Tuesday, second Tuesday meeting. If there's anything that needs to be done to make sure that that happens from a civic standpoint, please let us know. We're eager to participate in that process. We're eager to bring our unique insight to it as well. So I would urge that when we're looking at reading the paper and seeing, you know, the suicides continuing and people in crisis and how much their lives get turned upside down and how much cost it is when the police have to roll or when the ambulance has to roll a truck. So I just wanted to make it clear that that number shouldn't be counted, how many people are going to show up to it until the actual meeting, because we will be there on the second Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else in the room, public comment for items not on the agenda?
First of all, I want to thank this commission and particularly thank our city manager for coming to our downtown building owner and business association and giving such a candid and thorough answer to an hour's worth of questions.
Patricia, will you give us your name?
Oh, Patricia Grable, 204 East Calendar Street, the
Thank you.
Grable Hotel. Just throw that in. I want to say that the candid nature that took place at that meeting was forthright. It was direct. It was appreciated. And there wasn't a person on our board who didn't gain from that entire interaction. So thank you so much. I also am advocating for, as we go into the master plan, that we pay a great deal more attention to historic preservation. That's going to be a really important part, and I've just finished this wonderful print that people on actually advocating for historic preservation in our downtown. So I think that's going to be an important thing. And in the same vein, I would appreciate it if the city could answer my freedom of information request. I would appreciate that, and I would appreciate it if the commissioners, at least I knew that you had read the packet that I had given you on the TBID. And I want to let this body know, because it seems to oversee this TBID and I don't seem to know where else to go, is that I paid my TBID dues, but I did it in a cashier's check, which was written before the dues were due. So when I finally get an answer, and then I will certainly pay the dues, because it's an enormous amount of money for us. I mean, I am paying $752. And I don't know where the money's going, and I don't know how it's being distributed, and I don't know information I need to know. So I just want this body to be aware that I have paid those dues. I just need information if I may. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
And one other thing, I just want to say over and over again, in a small town like Livingston, I so appreciate it if people work together, an organization work together. And I would like very much to see the Explore Livingston, the Chamber, the downtown building owners, all of us get together, figure out some way that we communicate with each other, we like each other, we go to work because we have a lot to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Anyone else in the room? Public comment for things not on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll go online. Is there anyone online that would like to make public comment for items not on the agenda? You can raise your hand. And if you can't figure that out, feel free to just come off mute and say your name. One more time, anyone, public comment for items not on the agenda? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And we'll move on to consent items. Commissioners, would you, anyone like any consent items pulled this evening? If not, we entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve consent items A3.
Second.
I have a motion by Lyons and a second by Newt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, we have no proclamations this evening. No scheduled public comment. We'll go ahead and move on to action items. And our first action item this evening is Resolution 5126. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, calling for an election on the question of conducting a local government review and establishing a study commission to do so. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you and the commission this evening is the resolution 5126, and this is, as we noted, to call an election at the June primary on the question of whether or not to conduct a local government review. And if that is approved, voters would be asked at the November election to elect members of the study commission. This action is statutorily and constitutionally required in the state of Montana. And the calendar year 2024 is one of those local government review cycle years. So, unfortunately, we don't have much of an option in this one, just to be clear, going into the conversation. And so I will stand before you if there are any questions you may have. And it was pointed out to me by a member of the public that the community did conduct a local government review in 2020. That was outside of the constitutionally required process, and so we are still required to do this year. So we'll stand for any questions you have.
Okay. Commissioners, any clarifying questions for Mr. Gager? I have none either. I have a motion. And we can move to public comment.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 5126 and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Lyons. So we will go ahead and open this up to public comment. So all the rules and regulations I talked about earlier apply to all our sections of public comment this evening. So if you would like to make public comment on resolution 5126, please come on up to the podium. We'll start in the room.
She grave on 204 his calendar. I cannot advocate enough for a government study commission for Livingston. I've been attending these meetings for 25 years. And every time we have a government study commission, it informs the public as to what kind of government we have. It allows the public to look at the entire issue. It is, the opinion of the city manager or the commission isn't nearly as important in this particular thing as the fact that the public has a chance to look at what kind of government we have, to look at the alternatives, and periodically really have a chance to become more and more informed. I see nothing wrong with becoming more informed. There's no political ramifications of this government study commission. It's a group of small group of people who really put forth an effort to make this study make sense. So personally, I think we've never hurt ourselves by doing this. I think we hurt ourselves if we don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Anyone else in the room? Make comments on resolution 5126? All right, we'll go online. Anyone online that would like to make public comment on resolution 5126? Raise your hand, or if you like, you can just come off mute. State your name. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment for resolution 5126. Commissioners, any comments, deliberation on this item? Commissioner Schwartz.
I guess, yeah, I was gonna weigh in. I'll weigh in after the election, if it does pass, you know, as far as talking about the different types of government that we're allowed to have or do. And hopefully people take the time to read this. It's online, it's on the agenda, to understand exactly what kind of government, form of government the city of Livingston does have versus what's available out there. So I encourage everybody to please do some homework on this and read up on it. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Others?
It's well stated.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think the other thing that we all know, but you know, once something goes on a ballot, we can't take a position on it, but we can do education around what that thing is and what it can and can't do, and we can answer questions about it. The city manager can do that. But when things go on a ballot, then we as the city or commissioners don't take positions on those things, but we can do some education. So. Anything else? All right, I think we're ready for roll call.
Chair Kale,
4,
Vice Chair Newts,
4,
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Lyons,
4.
Commissioner Welch, 4.
motion passes. All right, moving on to our next item on the agenda. All right, so this is action item B. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending chapter 10, curfew, disturbing the peace and noise, and the Livingston Municipal Code by amending sections 10-5 and 10-6. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you, as you noted, is the second reading of ordinance 3051, which seeks to amend the noise provisions of the Livingston Municipal Code. This item was discussed at the prior meeting, so I will provide a bit of a summary because it looks like there might be one or two people in attendance who weren't here for the last meeting. As you might recall, the commission requested that staff work on the noise ordinance this past summer. The city received several special exception requests for uses that were not allowed by the underlying zoning. And as we worked through that approval process, it seemed as though there was a consensus on the commission that the noise ordinance could use some updating. Specifically, it really lacked any enforceable provisions. There were no established decibel levels for allowable noise, which is difficult not only from an enforcement standpoint, but actually is more difficult from a community standpoint when the code really allows anyone to lodge a noise complaint if they feel that their state of rest or repose is being disrupted really at any hour of the day. And so that was the genesis of the conversation here tonight. And so I will, as I said, I will run through a quick review of the presentation that was provided last time. And really, I will say that the focus here amongst staff, really, we did a literature review of looking at other communities across the state, and shown here on the screen for everyone are some community comparisons that compare what is proposed here this evening to our neighbors over to the east in Billings, as well as several to the west. And you'll see, I think, that the proposal that staff and I have generated and presented to you is certainly in line with much of what is happening in the state of Montana as far as these types of ordinances are concerned, and in fact is probably a little more generous than some of our neighbors. With that, I will stand for any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you. Commissioners. Commissioner Lyons.
Mr. Gager, do you mind laying out again what the current process is if a citizen has a complaint about noise violation? What in the existing code, what does that look like?
So in current practice, if a community member has a noise concern, they relay it to myself or a member of city staff. And then our code enforcement team goes and observes the condition. At this point, because we have no established decibel levels, and really, as I said, it comes down to whether one feels that their state of rest and repose has been disrupted. That really is the only yardstick, the only measure that we have in current code. It becomes difficult, if not impossible, to enforce, and certainly it is a very low bar for somebody to say that their state of rest or repose has been disrupted. And so we really at this point have an ordinance that is largely unenforceable.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other commissioners?
I have some questions that have come through. I know we talked about most of this at the last meeting, but recognizing that the questions have come forward again, I think it'd be nice maybe to get clarification now.
Absolutely.
So I think I'll just name like a few things all at once, if that's okay with Mr. Gager, and then he can go through the list. There's been some questions about what's the relationship between a potential noise ordinance, current or the one we're voting on, in relationship to the railroad, in relationship to the rodeo, jail time was one that people have questions about. And I believe you talked a little bit about this last time, like what our current laws say versus this. Another one was, I think, the very valid, I think they're all valid questions, first of all, but, how, before we get something in an agenda packet, how are staff included in the conversation? Specifically, there's concerns about police capacity and code enforcement capacity. And like, what do those conversations look like before a code or ordinance ever comes before the commission? Think the other sort of like overlying topic that has come up around noise since last summer is all the different events that have been happening. Like, there's a growing number of events, like you mentioned. Really in all around the south side, between neighborhoods and sort of surrounding particular neighborhoods. So I guess thoughts around that too, in terms of how the code was crafted in response to the previous commission conversations. So I think that might be a part that a lot of people might not be aware of, is just like some of that background of like how this conversation developed from some of those really starting last summer. More comments than I've ever heard as a commissioner around noise, but I think that's like the big stuff. I yield.
I'll let you do yours on a couple to add on, so, yeah, thank you, Mr. Gager.
Okay, I will take those in the order in which I heard them. With regard to the railroad, this noise ordinance, while it does include references to railroads, it's important to remember that railroads are categorically exempt from almost every state, federal, and local law that exists on the books. And so this ordinance joins that list. We do not have the power to control the railroad. Similarly, the rodeo is held at the Park County Fairgrounds, which is outside of city limits. And so to be clear, this ordinance will have no impact on the noise generated by the rodeo. With regard to the provisions, the penalty provisions that do include possible jail time, I would offer that what we did really was point to our pre-existing standard penalty provisions that already exist in the Livingston Municipal Code for certain violations, and that does include up to 6 months jail time, as has been reported. However, I would offer to the commission and to the community that code enforcement really is as much about education as anything else. In my almost 7 years of managing code enforcement directly, I can think of a small handful of code enforcement violation tickets that have actually been written. More often we find that folks, when approached with a possible code violation, really are happy to receive some education. Oftentimes people don't know the specifics of the municipal code, and so the city's position is as much to help people understand the provisions that are there. That said, in times when we don't have compliance, I kind of following good best practices in the industry, really believe in progressive enforcement and what's referred to in some circles as the enforcement ladder. And so we often don't start with the most harsh penalty that is available. Again, we start with a warning and then a conversation. And then if the conversation is unsuccessful, then we move into warning territory and other citations. But to be clear, any citations that are written are adjudicated in the municipal court and are not simply handed out by our staff unilaterally. Everybody does have their day in court, if you will. But please know, standing here today, I have a very difficult time imagining a situation in which somebody would be, sentenced to jail time for a violation. With regard to the staff role in the development of any ordinance, please know that I do involve staff at all levels in the process. And certainly if we have provisions that we're modifying that have a law enforcement implication, we do talk to both the police chief and code enforcement staff. The former police chief was involved in conversations around the noise ordinance, as you might recall last summer, when we had the conversations here at the commission meetings. And the staff and I very much did take direction from that individual, as well as others within the city who deal with these types of issues. And so, please know it is a collaborative process that takes into account many things, including the wishes expressed by the commission during our meetings. And then, I think your final point about, recognizing that there were some conversations this summer that occurred around events, and those really did influence some of the changes that are proposed here this evening. As I said, prior to the amendment that's before you, we had no measurable or enforceable components of the existing noise ordinance. If somebody didn't like what they were hearing, they could file a complaint and start an adjudicative process against anyone in the community. And so I think what we've provided is a little bit of operating clarity for members in the community to understand really what is allowed and what is not. And so I do recognize that is a bit of a change from the prior ordinance, but it is one that we had discussed here, and that generated the recommendation that's before you this evening. So I believe I addressed all your
think so.
your questions.
Yeah, I miss anything, I trust that the rest of you will think of it.
Any others before I? Okay, I have a few, because we've been receiving emails, and in some of the emails that I've received, some of these seem to have floated to the top, so we'll go ahead and ask those two. Will folks be able to use a lawnmower, a leaf blower, a snow blower, or any of those types of pieces of equipment during daytime hours?
Absolutely, those are exempted from the ordinance.
I've had that question, so I'm gonna ask folks to stay quiet. You will have your opportunity to make public comment, but I also want to make sure that folks can hear what's being said up here as well. So I had a few questions about that, so I wanted to make sure that that was.
And if I could just clarify, section C4, section C includes the exceptions. And number 4 is noise resulting from the operating of motorized lawnmowers fitted with equipment type mufflers between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Okay, and those are exempt.
Those are,
During
those
that
are
time.
exceptions to the noise ordinance.
And then I think we've heard, I heard from folks concerns about still being able to have summertime events. We have a lot of events here in the summertime, a lot of them that happen in the parks where there's bands and other things, and will those still be able to happen this summer, if this moves forward?
Yes, and I would offer within section C, which includes a number of exceptions, I would point people that may be following at home or in the packet otherwise to exceptions 6, 7, 8, and 9, which 6 provides an exception for activities on school grounds and public parks, which are conducted in the manner in which such spaces are generally used, including but not limited to school athletic and school entertainment events. And so I did also receive some comments related to football games and bands, and we believe that they are covered under that exception. Certainly, exception number 7 provides an exception for public park events, including bands, like you noted, and it provides athletic, musical, and other events permitted in writing by the city of Livingston. Those are accepted. And then number 8 refers to non-event, non-amplified noise from public parks, schools, and recreational facilities between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. And that really is our largest catch-all for children playing in the parks. I have kids also, and they enjoy the parks. And then exception number 9 provides an exception for special events for which a waiver has been granted. And there is a waiver and noise suppression plan process that's outlined in the ordinance as well.
Great. And then one more. Will the city staff be taking time to walk around the town specifically looking for noise violations?
As I indicated in my comments to Vice Chair Nudes, no, it is not our intention to be walking around town with noise meters. Quite honestly, we don't have the personnel capacity to engage in that. I'll let everybody know, code enforcement largely is a complaint-driven process. And we are not out there looking to catch any members of the community doing anything. But if there is a complaint that comes into City Hall, we certainly take the time to address it, have the conversation, and provide the education that I had mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other clarifying questions? Commissioner Lyons?
On page 105, it refers to residential, commercial, and industrial zones. Would you remind us how those are designated?
Absolutely. Our zones are designated by the use table. And so residential zones include R1, R2, R3, RMO, RMO2. I think I messed that last one up. It's not RMO, so
It's related to the zoning map.
exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
I forgot a question.
Please.
And I can't believe I forgot. I'm sorry. We've gotten a regular commenter talking about ongoing dog barking that's not addressed. And so I'm wondering, you might remember what I'm referring to. Would this like address those particular ongoing community concerns, and like what might that look like?
Yes, there is a provision in here related to animals. It is section A4, which refers to animals, and section A is the enumeration of violations and provides a list of following noises and acts that are violations. And number 4 refers to animals and states the keeping of any animal which, by causing frequent or long continued noise, disturbs the peace, comfort, or repose of any person in the vicinity. So I do believe that ongoing
Okay,
issue is provided for.
thank you.
Commissioners, anything else? Any other comments? Or excuse me, questions at that point? Okay. So we, so in general, because we have a lot of folks here that I recognize some and not others, so I want to be really transparent about the way that these meetings are run and the process and how we do this. So in general, we would have a motion and a second. And then from that, we would open it to public comment. We'll listen to public comment. And then the commissioners will have the opportunity to deliberate and make any amendments to a motion if they would like to. And that was the process that I'm planning to follow today, unless commissioners want to deviate from that.
Just if we have any additional questions, maybe too,
Yeah.
before we deliberate.
Yes. We can do questions, and so we're at the point now in the evening where I would say I would entertain a motion.
I'll make it.
Okay.
I move to approve the second reading of ordinance 3051. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending chapter 10 curfew disturbing the peace and noise of Livingston Municipal Code by amending sections 10-5 and 10-6 and authorize the chair to sign.
I'll second.
Okay, so a motion by Newts and a second by Schwartz. And so we will open up to public comment. We will open it up. Give me 1 second first. I just want to, because there's a lot of folks in the room, so I want to do it appropriately. We'll do. Yes. We're going to start in the room and then we will go online. So that you are aware during public comment, it is not a back and forth conversation. We can capture questions. And the commissioners can choose to ask those questions to the manager when it comes back to us for deliberation. So just to set everybody's expectations about how this goes. You'll have 4 minutes. Again, we'll ask you to write your name and address at the podium. And I do see that we have a gentleman in the back with a youngster, and I don't know if he would like to, if he wants to make a public comment, and I also don't want him to have to wait till the very end, so.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you have that opportunity as well. Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
Yep, Leslie Feigl, Livingston Area Chamber of Commerce. And so just a couple things here. I didn't know about last year, the staff getting together to discuss the noise ordinance. I don't miss your meetings, so missed that one. Nobody ever talked to me. Chamber of Commerce representing our downtown businesses, and the Chamber of Commerce puts on some of the largest events in the city of Livingston. So would have been great, because if staff's talking, maybe they could reach out to an organization like ours. To, you know, kind of give you feedback on our local businesses and what they expect. Also, I've heard a couple commissioners make comment about the growing events within the city limits. And that is in fact true. We are a very big hotbed of wonderful events. Our businesses count on having music events. We have places in our downtown businesses that have bands during our summer months that are very loud, and they definitely reach over the decibel range that you are stating in here. The Noise Control Act was put in place in 1972, and when it was actually enacted in the United States of America, it was done for construction of highways and airports and housing and residential and cities that were being formed around these particular places. And they found that people wanted to be able to control some of those areas, residential areas. Cornell law stated that quiet times were the first original terms that were used, and quiet time was after 11, and now it's running after like 10 o'clock at night. That's why if you go to a campground, they say quiet time is after 10 o'clock at night, no generators. So whether you're in the city or the county, as the city of Livingston has grown, and especially in our business district, I've been through these documents looking at this, and this is saying that if a business wants to have, or the Chamber of Commerce, an event in the evening hours, that we have to fill out a permit. So does that mean more money? Because we're already getting permitted to death with fees right now. So just curious on that. Next is, you know, I'm looking at how do we, so our bar owners that put on these bands that are going to have to now get a permit just to have a band every Friday or every Thursday night. We have one of our establishments has band 3 nights a week. So, you know, I can only imagine that that might be a huge hindrance. Then I'm looking over here, the maximum described level that you have in number 8 for special community events is 100 decibels. Again, amplified noise only up till 10 p.m. A lot of our bars, outside events, the bands, they'll go till 11 o'clock at night, some midnight. So, you know, I think that that really needs to be taken into consideration, because this is now affecting the economy of our downtown businesses. The noise, I'm going to go to number 4, specifically the lawnmowers. Federal law regulates lawnmowers, muffled mowers are being produced at 89 decibels. So that's clearly above your 65 decibels that you're allowing for residential areas during the hours up till 8 p.m. And you know, I know there's a lot of the commissioners that believe in the no mow May and all of that goodness. By the time the heat is down, it's after 8 o'clock. You're talking closer to 9 o'clock before you even want to mow your lawns. So the whole 8 o'clock thing in this community, mowing lawns with mowers that are clearly over the decimal range. Large mowers are 100 decibels, the smaller mowers, all are muffled at 89 decibels. Just for a little clarification on people that have that business that are now going to be affected, or does that mean that people have to run around and go get new mowers? I understand that. So, you know, I'm just telling you that this is more of a conversation. There's a room full of people behind me that want to talk. This is more of a conversation than what you guys did in second reading, when the people in the first reading didn't know about it, because I would have been here. So I appreciate it if you really think about this before passing this motion, that we need to maybe go through here and clarify just a few things like the fee schedule.
Leslie, I need you to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie, thank you.
Before we continue, we can have no clapping, cheering, we need to keep moving forward, so that has to be held.
My name is Glenn Farrell. I live at 1116 West Montana Street. I'm a retired police officer from this community. I've been in this community for 31 years. I'm a criminal investigator right now for the state of Montana Public Defender Office. I've responded to hundreds of complaints, of noise complaints, and have felt the frustration at times from it not really having great enforceability. However, what you have before you has gone too far. It's changed the hours. As Ms. Fergal said, mowing at night is sometimes a necessity for individuals. And I don't mean 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking 9 p.m., 8 p.m. I would appreciate it, or I think you would do very well by taking a look at those hours and adjusting those. Clearing up some of the confusion that is in this. It is just gone too far. And as Mr. Greger said, they don't have the intent to walk around downtown with a decibel meter. But when you give power to somebody, it doesn't matter what their intent is. They can at any time after that, after they receive that authority to go do that. Knowing that as a police officer. I would certainly hope that you reconsider this, and I understand adjustments might need to be made, but reconsider this and take your time and get this thing right instead of punishing the people in the community that have to work 2 jobs and come home and mow at night, or because they might have a pesky neighbor, or whatever other reason. I think the noise ordinances that I've had to enforce before took a lot of communication, a lot of working with the individuals involved at times, and get some understanding. But creating an ordinance like this does not build good neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Hannah Petrie and I live at 512 West Geyser Street. First and foremost, I would like to say that having a noise ordinance is quite important. There is much empirical evidence that shows the dangers of prolonged noise exposure leading to things like physical and mental health issues, and evidence can be traced back to the Noise Control Act introduced by the Environmental Protection Agency in 1972. After carefully examining the current municipal code and the proposed amendment to Ordinance 3051, I have some thoughts. The proposed amendment targets sections 10.5 and 10.6, which currently delineate, quote, prohibited noises and unlawful sound amplification from vehicles, unquote. The proposed amendment would expand section 10.5 and seemingly eliminate section 10.6. In the staff report for Ordinance 3051, it states that, quote, the modifications provide clear guidelines and standards for noise levels, ensuring consistency and enforcement, unquote. And then goes on to say, quote, this ordinance provides clear guidelines and standards for noise levels, ensuring consistency and enforcement. This clarity is beneficial for both residents and businesses as it sets defined expectations and reduces conflicts related to noise disturbances, unquote. From those statements, one can recognize that a main goal of this amendment is to generate clarity for the people. I have read this proposed amendment and I find it quite unclear in many areas. For example, the proposed amendment says, quote, it is unlawful for any person to make, continue, or cause to be made or continued any loud or unnecessary noise which either annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others within the limits of the city of Livingston, Montana, unquote. The use of language like annoys and disturbs does not provide any clarity for me. What constitutes these things and why are there no definitions provided? Even the current ordinance provides definitions. In the search for answers, I found a definitions section of the current municipal code and it stated, quote, all words and phrases shall be construed according to the common and approved usage of the language, but technical words and phrases and such others as may have acquired a peculiar and appropriate meaning in the law shall be construed and understood according to such peculiar and appropriate meaning, unquote. By this definition, this means we should be abiding by either the common understanding of the word or allowing the word to have situational meaning. Both options provide no clarity, and I think you'll find that everyone in this room has different definitions of the words disturbing and annoying. Words need to be defined, or else the law means nothing and is completely up to interpretation. The proposed amendment delves heavily into the usage of decibels as measurement of allowed noise levels during specific timeframes. How are these decibels measured? Is there a standard practice for measuring the decibels of a residential area, a neighborhood, or a house? Who will be measuring this? What will law enforcement be using in order to measure these things? If there is no standard practice, how will this aspect be used to ensure consistency in enforcement? If there is a standard for practice among law enforcement, will they need training and who will pay for it? Again, there is no clarity within the document speaking about these valid questions. Additionally, what constitutes over 55 decibels? Is having a family gathering outside with a fire, conversation, laughter, and perhaps the occasional song over that limit? It is unclear. Moving away from the clarity issue, what are the benefits of enforcing the noise curfew at 8 p.m.? What about in the summer when the sun doesn't set until after 8 and people are out enjoying the beautiful nature that we are so privileged to have access to? Lastly, I would like to discuss penalties. In the current municipal code, it states the first-time offenders will be charged with a misdemeanor and, quote, a fine not to exceed $100, while subsequent violations shall be punished by a fine not to exceed $500, unquote. The proposed amendment states that, quote, any person who violates any provision of this chapter shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor and, upon conviction, shall be fined not exceeding $300 or by imprisonment for not more than 6 months.
Hannah,
Yes,
your time is up.
awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Next, anyone else?
Josh Congleton. I have a few questions here.
Can we get your address for the record as well,
I'm not
please?
putting my address on the record. First off, I want to go to, I'm curious why the motion came before the public comment on this one, but not on the last question. That kind of stood out to me. Next, we're comparing ourselves to Bozeman, Billings, other cities. In other discussions, including city employee pays, the commission, prior city staff has said, we are not those cities. We cannot compare ourselves to those cities for the sake of pay. So why are we now doing it for laws? Why are we tasking law enforcement with this? They're already overworked and underpaid. They will, Mr. Gager, you said they will help on occasion. What is that occasion? Another question I had later I'll bring up now is after hours, after code enforcement leaves. What is going to be the process then? Because that leaves law enforcement, which is currently dealing with calls, as previous speaker said. They deal with it. It's not necessarily efficient, but this is just too much. Why are we choosing 8 p.m.? It's very early, as other speakers have said. 65 decibels is pretty low. I understand that other cities have even lower. Again, we are not those cities. I downloaded an app. Granted, it's not going to be the same as a actual legit ANSI device. I believe you said they were ANSI approved. School pickup line, 75 decibels. The wind was around 80 decibels, and that was on a slow day.
6 months.
The exemption only allows lawnmowers. If we are looking at this, and as other people have said, we're going by the plain language, you're telling us that we're going to be allowed to snow blow. Plain language says no snow blowing. Plain language says no leaf blowing. And we could expand that a million times, and there's still going to be something that is not included that should be. It's pretty clear that on Facebook, here tonight by the reactions and the comments that the public does not agree with this. Ms. Newts, last time you said, if this is too restrictive, the public will let us know. I believe the public has let you know many times over. You already discussed the train ordinance. Why are we even including that again if we're not gonna enforce it and can't enforce it? You were talking about exemption number 6 earlier. You're saying, oh yeah, it's okay to have a party in a public where it's or at a public park where it's expected, you know, within the standard use of that park. So the city runs a majority of the parks. So for me to have a party where those events might happen, we're gonna have to pay the city to be able to go and have the freedom to have our own parties and our loud music, singing, dancing. That seems like a bit of a conflict to me, that you're saying we'll have you pay the city so that you can rent a park and then you can have your party there. If I want to have a party in my backyard or my front yard, that should be included, and certainly not at 8 p.m. Lastly,
Josh, your time is up.
thank you. My last point will be, regarding renting a public park. Oh, quiet hours. I believe currently public access is defined by quiet hours. Are you now going to be shutting down parks early? Thank you.
Come on up.
Jesse Coulomb, 219 Gardner. So, the new noise ordinance, as it was previously stated, we're not Billings, we're not Missoula, we're not Bozeman. None of them 3 cities have a sawmill. Has anybody went and checked the decibel reading on just a normal day, just to find out where it's at before trying to push a bill through? Or how about Main Street? How busy is Main Street on an average day? Just an average day, just run around, take a reading. I'm the only eating establishment late night. It is me from 10 p.m. till 10 a.m. I'm the only place in town to eat. I won't be able to operate under that. And where's the reading going to take place from? Are you going to take it from the city street so I have a fighting chance? Or are you going to take it from the bank? Because that's the property line. It's like 3 feet away. If you take it from the bank, I have to operate outside city limits. Live in city limits. Have business in city limits. I pay for the city taxes, whatever they want to charge, we pay for it. So why can't we just be, you should have, the way it should have been, you should have ran through town, take normal decibel readings throughout the year, find out what is normal and build the bill around that. If you're looking for clarification, but that's ambiguous as a bill can get. I mean, if you wanted to gun for any business with that thing in place, you could just rack up tickets until they're rotting in jail. So I would strongly urge to vote no. Not only that, you close the interstate down, everybody comes right through town. If you're on a Harley, what, you just push? You know, you can't have exemptions. If there's more exemptions on the bill than there is words in the bill, then it's just a bad bill. Just throw it out, start over. Not opposed to a noise ordinance bill, but you can't to me, it doesn't make sense. So I hope you come to senses. I would like to also mention that this is the second reading and nobody would even knew it was happening for the first reading, but we're still protected under the Fifth Amendment of due process, and to just throw it, everybody's here with a 24-hour notice. Nobody even knew about it until last night, which is pretty big showing for less than a 24-hour deal. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Well, come on.
Hi. Caitlin Marquez, 107 Elm Lane.
So under, let's see, 9 noise levels in residential, I think for me, my big issue is it's so hot in the summertime and my neighbor kids, like, man, after 8 PM, they're getting on those trampolines and they're jumping around and they get the dogs riled up till 10 PM. And you're asking children to be quiet for 13 hours. Like, aren't our kids told to be quiet enough? And I also feel that, you know, it just, you know, the times just got taken a little bit too far here. But additionally, I do feel that jail time needs to be completely taken off the table. We don't need any other reasons for police officers to come to our homes and arrest us. I kind of view this as like almost like a cracked windshield. We all have cracked windshields, but you don't get in trouble for it unless they're looking for a reason to get you for something else. So, yeah, I think it just got taken a little bit too far, and noise is good for business and it's good for our communities. You know, I mean, we're not asking to, you know, party at all hours of the night. We're just asking to keep the joy around. Music, kids playing. It's, you know, it's okay. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
this is brand new for me, so bear with me. Let me put my name on here. My name is Randy Gates. I'm a resident for 6 years. One of the people that moved in, purchased. I was made aware of this tonight and I thought I'd come and get educated. Okay, so I was also a businessman for 25 years before being a teacher. So clarity, communication is what's going to get anything done. And my lack of understanding is on me if I didn't read the entire set of codes. I got a lot of information from you folks today. It was great. Problem is, when I looked at it to come here, your guidelines on the action items, I have no clue what a local government review is. It would be good to just note it. This ordinance has got nothing but just the ordinance on it. And it's amending, but amending what? I always like to come prepared, and I couldn't prepare. So I just have a few points and then I'll let everybody go home, I guess. 2 things. Is this going to affect a person going out in the street on the 4th of July and shooting off a firework? That's a big one for me, that you're messing with someone's right to celebrate. That has to be noted. You're allowing rodeos and such, I suppose, to do that, which is fun. I love it every year. But is that gonna, if that's not specified somehow, that needs to be. We actually puts a smile on my face when I hear it. Secondly, don't laugh. I bought a big compressor this year and I got a lot of sprinklers in my house. And I got tired of somebody trying to charge me $400 to do my sprinklers in the fall. That's when I stopped. I bought a beautiful one and I actually did it myself. That gonna be a problem? Because I don't know anything that's louder than a compressor. And that takes about 2 hours to do. And I got that, so it would be quieter than my little pancake quarter cable, which would take the roof off my house. That, the 4th of July, and finally, not to be critical, and I'm not, I think you need to hire someone to go through the entire municipal code book and bring it up to standards. Cause that clarity right there, you know, got a lot of questions about this, that and the other tonight. If it was clear, you'd have half a room here, I think. So that's the only thing I can say. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Boyce, 218 South F Street. I had a bunch of questions, but actually, Mr. Gager, you actually answered a lot of them. I was thinking about where this came from. If the existing rules that we have, if they were not working, I understand where they're coming from now. You answered that. I appreciate that. But as everybody else was saying, 8 o'clock is way too early. And it's gonna be measured by someone who's walking along with a decibel meter. Well, someone has to have that. Someone has to go and measure it at the time that it's happening, right? So if it's 8 o'clock at night, who's gonna go measure it? You're gonna hire somebody on overtime and pay them overtime wages to go and check and see it? You gotta call them from home. How does that work? Where's this money come from? Second thing is, a vacuum cleaner puts out 65 to 85 decibels. And as I understand it, you're gonna be reading this at the property line. Well, if my kids barf all over the car and I gotta clean it out at 8 o'clock at night and I vacuum it out and you're measuring it, you're standing in the alley, which is the property line, my car is right there. I'm going to jail for 6 months. That, jail time is just baloney. That has to go. That definitely has to go. And I think the timing is wrong, and I think you guys should postpone this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Oh. Did you want to make a comment? I thought, okay. I'll have you come up next. Oh, okay.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Steve Schmidt. I also choose not to share my address on the record. But I just had a couple of things to bring up when reading through and listening to some of the discussion that's happened. It seems like the statements were, when we make rules, we want them to be reasonable. We want them to be enforceable. As an individual that, you know, served in the US Marine Corps and is a military veteran, has over 20 years of experience and still currently in public service and essential service to provide needs to the community. Rules like this put people like me and my wife and my family at jeopardy, because if I need to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go snow blow, because I'm in an area that receives massive drifts, and there's no way we'd be able to get out with a shovel, there's times where the city will plow us in. I'll have to get up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning to make it to work, or to get my wife off to go work, to go and, you know, provide services. So there seems to be a lot of protection that's being built into place, in my opinion, for the city, such as protecting the parks, the noise from the parks, and creating a bubble within that. But what about our family homes? What about our yards where cousins come over, friends come over, we barbecue? It's 8 o'clock, the kids are playing in the safety of their own home, things that we've built for them. That seems to be completely elated in the movement of this ordinance. So with that, I would just ask to think the reasonable aspect of what this is. Those of us that have to get out of our homes, you know, to go work, to be able to do that. Those that are respectful of the neighbors. It was stated earlier that the intent is not to go out and enforce. If that's not the intent, then why have it? Why go to that extreme would be my question. Because in turn, all you're doing is creating something that in the power of the wrong hands could enforce it. And then the next thing you know, I'm facing a misdemeanor, I face losing my job or whatever, because I'm trying to provide for my family and be able to get out to provide for the community. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else in the room?
Hi, I'm Jenna Davison, never done this before. I work at the school. My husband works at the lumberyard. I have no clue the decimal levels up there. No clue, but it would be nice to know. Because my husband is hard of hearing. 7 AM doesn't work, 8 PM doesn't work, and the jail time doesn't work. So can we work on those? And kids need to play. And yeah. Short, sweet, simple.
Thank you, Jenna.
My name's Mary Crable. I'm on Fun Street, as I like to call it, F Street, 113 North F Street. I just like to say, you know, on record that I do disagree with the current draft of this. I think a lot of people do, so I just want to come up here. I concur with what a lot of you have already said, so just saying, I think the current draft is not reasonable or will not work for the current community.
Thank you, Mary. Others in the room?
My name's Ian Thomas. I'm at 320 South L. I play music for a living, so I have a lot of concerns about the events too, but I figure that's probably pretty fine. Permitting and all that, that's not my main concern. It's all been said before, but I agree the jail time is really worrisome. The hours are too early and too late, depending on which way you look at it. 8 PM is too early. 7 AM is probably too late. I also would like to go on record and represent all of us in the community that are not day people. Most of our waking hours are in the evenings. And so we have to do a lot of our normal tasks later than most people would do them, even if they're inside the home. My other concerns, the decibel levels are incredibly low. It really catches everything at all hours of the day. So everyone is basically in violation 24 hours a day. And it's just a matter of whether or not you want to enforce it. And that's so real. My voice right now is 60 decibels. And, you know, that's pretty much 24 hours a day, any kind of thing that you do. And then the ambient noise of the town. Like someone was talking about the wind, you could go outside my house at any hour a day and ambient noise would possibly put me in violation. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Others?
Hello, my name's Barb Bagel and I recorded my address on this sheet. So I believe it was in the Livingston Enterprise that I read that 3 city employees of the City Code Enforcement Division would be tasked with enforcing the noise ordinance. They would be occasionally supplemented, aided by the police department. Well, if this ordinance passes, I want to look at this as a safety issue to the city employees. The non-law enforcement people that would be responding to these neighborhood disturbances. Because you're gonna have a complainant. And I think, you know, it's gonna be a ruckus for someone to call in and complain, which they're entitled to do. But if this ordinance passes, I don't think it should be non-law enforcement people responding to the noise disturbance. And I don't know any police officers personally, nor do I know any city employees personally. I'm just looking at basic safety, that if someone's gonna respond to a noise disturbance, they better go with a gun. They need to be trained. And I also think 8 PM is too early for the noise stuff. And then I'd also like to know if there will be a fee to get a special permit to have an event at your house. So is a fee associated with that? Thank you.
Others in the room?
Jolene Birdie, address is on here. Okay, so Melissa Noon stated, so it seems like this is a reasonable place to start. And if in fact, if it's too permissive, I think the public will tell us, and if it's too permissive and we need to edit. Or if it's too restrictive, I think the public will let us know. I think they've all let you know. And I get it, you know, jail time is probably not gonna be one of those things, but it could. So you gotta be like really specific, and probably taking jail time out would probably be great. And if you want clarification so that you can, you know, hold the people that need to be held accountable for the noise population, then you just need to like clarify, you know, fighting in the streets. Your neighbor's having a huge quarrel, you know, please go respond to that. Causing a noise disturbance, okay, that's totally acceptable. But people having a party in their backyard, you know, kids out jumping on the trampoline, like a lot of what everybody's talking about, that's the things that need to be clarified. So, you know, I hope you stick with it. Saying that you're gonna listen to the people, take some time to edit and vote this down tonight.
Thank you, Joanne.
Joanne.
Mother folks, Joanne, right?
No, Joanne.
Jolene, thank you.
Shauna Gonzalez, 612 North 7th Street. As the prior gentleman stated, his talking voice is 60 decibels. I've got a husband who has spent his entire life running heavy machinery. He works at Printing for Less, running the big presses. The man is deaf. He can't hear when we're talking to him. He speaks much louder than anybody else. He would be in violation in our own house, talking to us, if you're measuring from the street. I have an autistic child. He's not going to be quiet all the time. I'm not going to expect him to be. So he, in our own house, would be in violation. This is ridiculous. Then you've got kids that have spent all day in school being told to be quiet, mind their manners, keep their mouths shut, behave, and then they finally get home from school at 4 o'clock at night, and by 8 o'clock, they have to be quiet again? Are we insane? Seriously, insane, thinking that we're gonna keep them quiet again at 8 o'clock at night. There needs to be more thought put into this. A lot more thought put into this. My neighbor can just call up and be like, Shauna's kids are outside playing again. My house, my yard, and it's 8 o'clock at night. Bedtime is not 8 o'clock at night, so why would my kids be in the house and be quiet? And it's summer, when it's so hot during the day that we're keeping them inside so that they're not getting dehydrated, we don't let them out until later when it has started to cool off. But you want an 8 o'clock time limit for them to be inside in summer? It's not even dark yet. And we're talking teenagers. We have set up an entire game room in our garage so that we can keep kids safe somewhere. Come to our house, play here, be safe, where parents know where you are. But now you've got to shut up at 8 o'clock at night? Some thought really needs to be put into this. Because I can guarantee where my house is, with that hill behind my house, everything echoes very loudly. I can hear construction from 3 blocks over. I can hear all talking on the porches of my neighbors that are up on the hill. If I have an asthmatic coughing fit, do you know how I need to stop it? Being that it's so cold here for 6 months out of the year, I'd go outside to my front porch because it's cold enough to stop my asthmatic coughing fits. And I could face jail time for that, for having a coughing fit on my porch. Seriously, get with the program. These numbers are ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone else in the room?
Christina Nelson, I have, multiple addresses with rentals. We have multiple businesses also, we have electrical company and we have service calls in the evenings. We won't be able to go and do those. People will be without power sometimes in the evenings all night long until, the next morning, if we can't fix those things. And a lot of our, rentals will not get fixed anymore because after work is when we go and work on our rentals. So I hope you take into that into account also.
Thank you, Christina.
Corey Davis. 910 East Geyser. A lot of us in this room work different hours, odd hours. We have things going on. After work, I have to work on the wife's car, family car. Sometimes I gotta bang on a Chevy with the hammer till 9:30 at night to make it run. So my family's safe. So am I gonna get a ticket and possibly jail time because I'm trying to keep my family safe by working on a car till 9, 10 at night? That's just ridiculous. I can see having something till, noise like it is now, 10 o'clock at night. Everything shut down, that's whatever, but these hours are not good, because everybody has different working hours, different times when they're doing their different projects. Like that lady just said, working on the homes and all that stuff. You can't get nothing done when get off work at 7 o'clock at night and you gotta fix your renter's house. You have an hour to fix a door or something. So hope you guys take that in consideration.
Thank you, Corey. Others in the room?
Hello, my name is Tatiana Kundrat. I will just put my address right here. I work overnights at Livingston Hospital. I do 6 12-hour shifts in a row. In the summertime, I'm pretty much nocturnal as well. Therefore, whenever I need to mow my acre of property, I choose to mow after 8 p.m. for multiple reasons. A, if you mow at high noon, the grass is going to die when it's 80 degrees and there aren't any clouds out there. I made that mistake one time. First time mowing a lawn. Hey, at least it got mowed. Regardless, so there's that point. Another point I'd really like to bring up is the fine. $300. Excessive is not even the correct word. I just pulled it up on the Montana government site that for a speeding ticket, for 30 miles over the speed limit, you're charged $200. So what, the speed limit through town is 25? So that means somebody can fly through town at nearly 60 miles an hour and they're gonna get fined 200, but heaven forbid you have a spirited barbecue or mow your lawn at the wrong time and you're gonna get charged $300. Also, a lot of people that are doing these things at night, they work odd hours. They don't have enough money to afford to hire a mow company or to hire a mechanic or to take their car to their dealership to get it fixed. It's ridiculous. And that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana.
You are welcome.
Hi, I'm Julie Eaton and I live at 431 South Fifth. One of the things the same thing that I'm hearing tonight, I think it needs to be moved to sort of like reflecting the 10 o'clock time, not 8 o'clock. Get rid of jail time, keep the fines low. And please also consider that after coming out of COVID, people with mental health issues and after a long winter, being able to recreate outside is a very important part of their mental health. I'm gonna advocate for that.
Thank you, Julie. Anyone else in the room?
Amanda Davis, he put our address on here already.
I would like to know about vehicle starting. Because we all know that some of us get up really early to go to work and have to start our vehicles so they warm up. So vehicles are loud. Some vehicles are louder than others. We're gonna get a ticket for that. He's getting up to go protect our community in his job role. Is he gonna get ticketed because he's warming his truck up so that he doesn't blow an engine? Am I gonna get ticketed for getting home too late and my car's too loud? That's what I'd like to know.
Thank you, Amanda. Others in the room?
My name is Jessie King. I am both a resident and a business owner here, and I haven't thought of any business, and I've thought all night, that wouldn't violate this. There's tons of people that have come up here and spoke and said amazing things, and I don't feel like I need to repeat it. But I do have a couple questions. I know that you use the examples of other places. And I have questions about, like, what are their citation numbers? How much do they then spend? And I mean, I think the reality is they're gonna call you in the middle of the night when they have an issue, or after 8. And it's not gonna be you guys that answers the phone, right? It's gonna be the dispatch, which means probably a police officer's gonna have to get dispatched, which means they're gonna have multiple calls about this. And then there's gonna be, in my opinion, a real emergency where the police are needed. And they're gonna be out with a decimal meter, trying to figure out how loud somebody's party is. I don't think it's a good use of our resources, and I don't think the public wants it. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Jessie. Anyone else in the room?
Hi, I'm Jock Harvey. I have a business downtown. That's, most of my concerns are probably the downtown aspect. Most of our business doesn't even start till 10, 11 o'clock at night. I have a business or a music venue up top. Our music starts at 8. Whole building's sound deadened, but I'm sure you could hear it from the outside of the building. And if it's at the property line, I mean, there's no way I'm gonna get around it, other than shutting it down, you know? So I'd like a little more concern in, looking more into how we handle downtown with the businesses, and plus with all the, like, no smoking. So you have crowds outside that smoke. I mean, who gets in trouble for that when they're talking and having fun? You know, it's like, a little more clarity on that would be great. You know, I know it's a difficult bill to work on. I'm all for it, but, I don't want to see it as a weapon for us, you know? Where I'm paying, you know, $1,000 a week to stay afloat. I don't know what your fine system is, or the jail thing, I think is way over the top, you know? So that's all I got to say. No more thought. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room before we go online?
I suppose we only get one turn.
One turn, yep. Okay, if we don't have anyone else in the room, I'm gonna ask for a motion to take our break, and then we will come back and go to everyone online.
I make a motion to take 10-minute recess.
Second. I have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Newt. We will take a 10-minute break. So that'll get us back here right at 7:10. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna call us back to order. So we will resume where we left off, and that was going to folks online for public comment for those online. If you have a public comment online, I'm gonna ask you to raise your hand. Let's start with that, and then if we have difficulties with that, we can also just come off mute. But if anyone has a comment online and would like to make a comment, if you can raise your hand on the Zoom feature, I am not seeing anyone who's raised their hand. I'm gonna offer another way to do this in case people are having difficulties. If you would like to make a comment, you can come off mute and say your name, and we'll just try to keep it as orderly as possible. So anyone want to come off mute and make a comment? There's quite a few folks online, so I'm gonna ask again, because I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to comment. If you are online and would like to make a comment, feel free to unmute yourself and say your name.
Chris King is off.
Yeah, Chris, I see you're off mute. Did you want to make a comment?
I am curious about how this came up. Presumably there have been questions from the community about why there needs to be a change from the 10 PM to the 8 PM. And I assume that this is a good faith effort. And I would love to hear from the commission about how this came up, because just to have one person weigh in against all the other comments, it doesn't seem that unreasonable, because I assume that the city doesn't have the capacity or the interest in shutting down mowing and parties and children playing and sneezing. And so I was just curious, there's probably a baseline for this change, and I think that it would be valuable to hear what that is.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else online? Feel free to come off mute and say your name to start with.
Yeah, my name is Leah Egbers and I live up in the Northtown area. And I am just going to echo kind of what everybody else is saying, of that like 8 PM is far too early, especially in the summer months when it's not getting dark until 10 o'clock at night. And yeah, you have evening dinners and gatherings with friends and family, and kids are out on the street riding their bikes and giving the power. Having this in writing does give someone a power and kind of gives them the power to say, well, these 5 little kids who are out having fun, they're above that decibel, and it can just like really ruin an evening for kids and families, and especially when there isn't a lot of places for kids to go. And so limiting even them being able to be outside in their own home or neighborhood can be really detrimental. And I think it would be, if you're like worth talking to some of the people in the school districts and school psychologists on like what is the impact of this potentially on childhood development, like, and long-term effects, and looking at what are other cities doing of equal or larger size. Like I would be curious if Bozeman their noise ordinance closes that, it stops it. It like you have to be quiet at 8 o'clock. So I think I would just really think about all of those things. So that's all.
Thank you, Leah. Nancy, I see your hand up.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Nancy.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I just want to say my background is a teacher, and the noise of children, I wish we heard more children talking, because it's too quiet around here as far as I'm concerned. I also want to mention, I've lived near the railroad. I've lived under a flight path in Seattle, and I've lived near highways. And I've lived in large cities. It's the saddest place I have ever been. And the other thing, people have a lot of different work hours. You can't regulate 8 o'clock. I live with a lot of people who work at the mines. They come home late at night, they go to work early in the morning. They create noise when they come home. They have to start their car, they have to do work. I think we are very quiet. I think it's a complete waste of time to talk about noise. We don't have any real noise. And also, I listen to the scanner. We have a real issues, but noise is not one of them. That's it.
Thank you, Nancy. Angela, I think I see you came off mute. Go ahead. State your name.
Hi
and
there.
address.
I am Angela Devani, 423 South F Street. And I got on late, so I'm sure that everybody's covered a lot of the main topics. But from what I'm remembering, when the Shane Center first requested to build their amphitheater, there was a huge discussion about the noise ordinance and the level of decibels. And in fact, I remember Melissa talking about going around and measuring the decibels during the summer concert series. And there were a lot of stipulations put around the Shane building their amphitheater. And when their concerts had to stop, and also giving them the opportunity to do a couple of things at a limit of how late they could go, if they could go till 10 or something, a certain number of times through the summer. Are they exempt from this? And I'll be honest, I haven't read the whole ordinance and what is being amended. So I'm just not sure how all that ties in, since this is the first time I remember anything really coming up about the noise ordinance. And now it feels like the community is being pressured to comply with some different restrictions, because now we're going to have this great music venue that's outdoors. So that's just kind of what it feels like. And I want to urge the commission to reconsider the depth of how strict this ordinance is going to be for the decibel levels. So thank you for all you're doing. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Anyone else online? I'm going to ask one more time. Anyone else online? Feel free to come off mute and just say your name. I don't see anyone, do you? Okay. All right, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. And we will go into commissioner deliberation. Yeah. But first, we are gonna start with some clarifying questions. I've written some questions down here. I know other commissioners have, from what folks have said during their public comment. So we will try to address as many of those as we can, maybe pull some themes together. So I'll start and then I'll work our way down the table here, okay? Mr. Gager, I'm just trying to- Can we talk about downtown? Seems like there were a lot of questions about downtown. And bars that have bands, people outside. Can you give us a little clarification on that?
Yes, and I think it is important to remember, there is language in here with regard to, I guess, just to be clear for everyone that may be following at home, I'm talking about section A9 and with noise levels. And so it's important to note that the ordinance as drafted includes a note that levels will be measured at the property line, and then it provides decibel levels for each zone. Very frequently, I leave this building after 9 or 10 PM at night and walk home down Main Street. And I'm happy to report that none of my levels on my decibel meter have exceeded the proposal that's included in here, none of my observed levels. And so there was a comment about whether or not folks have actually walked around town with a noise meter and measured decibels. I personally have done that. I know other staff members and members of the commission have also done that. And so, you know, it is my expectation that this ordinance does not create any situation that would be in violation that's already pre-existing. You know, and it's noted, you know, with regards to concert venues or other places where bands may play. I would remind people that, you know, while it may be substantially greater than 60 decibels within the building, outside of the building, you know, often walls of the building buffer the noise and bring that noise down quite substantially. And so, again, my observations is that we really would not have very many situations where businesses are normally exceeding the allowed levels. That said, there is an opportunity in here for folks to prevent a noise suppression plan, which is outlined in the ordinance, to be reviewed and approved by the city. And so there is, if any business has concerns about their operations and ability to comply, there is another avenue if they find themselves unable to comply. And I guess if I may take a moment to dovetail upon what I have listed as the first question onto this. There is no permit fee that is existing in our fee schedule that is adopted and approved by the commission related to the noise suppression plans or events specifically like this. We do have an event permit fee for events that seek to use the public property or the public right of way for public special events. But we do not have anything related to the noise ordinance or noise suppression plan fees. If that was ever created, that would come before you folks and be heard in a public meeting.
So just I'm gonna clarify that even just a little bit more and just say this ordinance creates no new permitting fees.
That is correct.
What about, there's a question here about ambient noise versus sort of I'll call it the problem noise. How do we, you know, the wind's blowing hard, the wind is registering at a certain decibel. But then there's a nuisance noise, I guess I would say. So are you able to distinguish the two?
Yes, you know, noise reading devices certainly do pick up on background noise. That said, you know, I'm not aware of what government department controls the wind, but when I find that out, we might send them a ticket. But no, you know, noises made by nature are necessarily exempted from this.
Can you, if the wind's blowing really hard one day, but then someone calls and says, I have this complaint, my neighbor or someone else is making this very loud noise, I can hear it. Are you still able to make those determinations?
Certainly, if the noise is exceeding the ambient noise, that will be picked up by a monitor.
Okay. Bounce around just a little bit. What about vehicles starting early or late? We get up early and it's cold and we need to turn our vehicles on.
And if I could, Chair Kale, point you to section A5, which provides an exception for any vehicle that operates with a muffler or other device, which will effectively prevent loud and explosive noises. And so, yes, vehicles with mufflers are exempted, whether it's a automobile, motorboat, they're any internal combustion engine is exempted so long as it has a muffler.
How would food trucks be handled in the downtown area?
They would be subject to the limits included in the commercial district, which as proposed are 80 decibels from 7 AM to 8 PM and then 60 decibels from 8 PM to 7 AM.
Kind of wanted to hit on this one, and I know the answer to this one. Someone brought up fireworks. Can you remind folks what the city's rule is on fireworks?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's a great question. I'm a big lover of fireworks myself. That said, fireworks are against section 11 of the municipal code in the city of Livingston and are not allowed anywhere, regardless of what happens tonight with section 10, the noise ordinance. The fire chief has the ability to regulate fireworks within the city, and they require a permit, largely because we have a lot of old wood structures that are very closely situated to each other.
There were a few questions about after 8 o'clock. And at that time, if there was a noise complaint registered, who enforces?
So the primary enforcers of code violations in the city of Livingston are our code enforcement division. We have several employees in that division, and they are our first level of response. I will say that while they have typically worked normal business hours, that is not the case. We do have enforcement that happens after hours and on the weekends, and we do schedule that regularly so as to avoid overtime. That said, there will very likely be cases that may come in, complaints that may come in after a code enforcement officer has left for the day. Those will be routed through dispatch and sent out to the appropriate department that is on staff.
Okay, thank you. There was a question about blowing out sprinklers with the compressor. I know lots of other people use compressors for all different situations.
Yeah, and I guess if I could, I might, because I had a few questions on my list, not only related to compressors, but I heard some comments on snow blowing and emergency work from a landlord as well. And if I could focus the commission's attention on section C, which includes exceptions. Exception number 3 deals with noise resulting from emergency work. And so it certainly seems like there is an allowance there for after hours plumbing or other emergency work to occur. There was also a comment about snow blowing or just snow removal generally speaking. And I could point the community and the commission's attention to exception number 10, which includes noise from construction or maintenance activities performed by the city or at the direction of the city, because the city includes a requirement for snow removal on public sidewalks. The interpretation is that any homeowner that is doing that work is doing it at the direction of the city. And so clearing of snow from sidewalks or driveways is accepted from the provisions of this code. And I will note just, snow removal and others are specifically mentioned in that exception there. So operating with snow blowers outside of the hours is permissible.
Right, thank you for that. We had a question about the Shane Center. And are they exempt from this ordinance, or how does that work? I think was the question.
Excellent question, and I will, in answering the question, if I could just broaden it, maybe, commissioners, you recall that the commission approved 2 special exception permits this summer, and both were for public entertainment venues, and the commission specified as a condition of both of those approvals that both of those venues are required to abide by the noise ordinance that is then currently in effect. And so there is no grandfathering or pre-existing non-conforming situation created with either of those venues.
I'm getting sort of to the end of mine. Wondered if you had some to continue with. I bet you do.
Yeah. So there was a question about competing calls, like if there's competing interests on police, which is not a commission decision. But could you share with the public how that's dealt with when dispatch gets calls and police might be at one call and there's, a more emergent situation? I think
No,
that was a concern.
absolutely. I will start by saying that the city of Livingston enjoys very productive and fruitful and successful mutual aid relationships with all of our emergency service partners in the county, not just on the law enforcement side, but on the fire and emergency medical service side as well. And so we very frequently are backed up or supported by our partners, and conversely, we support them in their efforts. That said, there is a natural prioritization of calls that takes into account the public safety nature of the work. And it is not uncommon that our team is out at 2 or 3 calls at a time. And in fact, it's all too common for us. And so that is something that our emergency service professionals deal with on a daily basis. And I have the utmost confidence that our new chief and our fire chief are able to manage that workload.
Very valid question. I don't think she's here still, the person who asked it, but like, for those of us who have family members that are perhaps louder than the average family member for various reasons. How does it pertain to like people in their homes, for some of those specific, if you need me to repeat the examples, I will, but you're probably remembering.
Oh, yeah, no, I certainly, I had a few comments that kind of were in that vein. And again, I would really kind of urge the commission to remember that, noise that occurs inside the house is frequently buffered by the roof walls and windows of the house. And so while, and also it's important to know that distance helps dissipate sound. And so, when we had a commenter speaking that he was speaking at 60 decibels, that may have been the case right there, but my decibel meter over here was only reading at 30 decibels. And so distance helps dissipate sound. And again, not to sound like too much of a nerd here, but as I walk around, at night, walking my dog or doing other things and have the decibel meter out, I have not encountered noise above 55 decibels. And I've got some neighbors whose kids are in a band, I think, and they play in the garage, and even at their property line, they're not exceeding the 55 decibels of the evening hours in my observations.
I'm gonna keep going through some of the. Let's see. There was a question, and I realized that some people came on later, but there was a question about what other cities are doing. And I know you already, when you introduced the item, you already shared this, but would you mind pulling it up again?
Absolutely. And while I pull that up, I certainly recognize that we are not Billings or Bozeman or Missoula or Great Falls or any other of the fine cities in the great state of Montana. That said, it is always instructive from a public policy formulation standpoint to understand what other communities that deal with similar issues are doing in response to those issues. And so, Vice Chair Newts, for your and the community's benefit, I've shown those comparisons.
And so in conjunction with this, one of the other sort of paired, it was someone else, I think, that asked, but it was about, do we have a sense of what it looks like in other communities? And I would invite you, since you said 7 years experience directly with this topic, can you shed some light on what enforcement looks like? What, I think you already did that in your intro, but if you wanted to share more, just to give people an idea of, what do tickets actually look like? What does the actual process look like when there's a noise ordinance? Maybe like wherever you lived before when you were doing noise ordinance, noise enforcement. How did those decibel levels compare to the other place? Yeah, anything you want to add about that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So in determining the proposed decibel levels, staff and I, again, reviewed what other cities in the state were doing. And also I looked at other places that I've worked, as you pointed out. And I will say that in our work, we intentionally chose the highest levels of allowable decibels that were observed in any other ordinance that we reviewed. And as you pointed out, I did come from a municipality across the lines over in the state of Idaho. And we had significantly lower decibel levels even than the city of Missoula has. Our nighttime residential decibel level actually was down at 45, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And so, you know, that was what worked for that community and had been shown to be beneficial for that community. I do recognize that Livingston is a different community, and so that is again why we have gone around and actually taken readings and then also reviewed what other communities are doing, and really to come up with something that we think is workable both for all members of the community, you know, those that make noise and those that listen to noise.
And I think those of us that were on the commission when you were hired have had to read about a little bit about that community to see what size towns you've managed before, or what size staff you've managed before. Would you say that for the benefit of the public, can you describe like maybe how that city staff compared to this in terms of numbers and the ability to enforce code?
Yeah, no, a very fair question. We had a total staff when I left of 61. That included 14 sworn law enforcement officers and 2.5 code enforcement agents. And so relatively comparable to the size of staff that we have here in Livingston. And I, in answering that question, recognize that I omitted part of your earlier question, which was related to my experience with noise ordinance violations. And quite honestly, as I look back, noise ordinance violations were very few and far between that they were reported to my office. And the only tickets that we ever wrote of a monetary value beyond just a warning and a conversation with community members were for large commercial construction projects that were working either after hours and on the weekends. And that really, I would also say, speaks to some of the necessity of penalty provisions. You know, in that community, we had a number of construction projects that had a construction value in excess of $40 million. And when folks are working on a project of that size or any size, you know, at the end of the day, in the end of the project, time is money. And there is a value to being able to accelerate a project. And so if I understand the community's reticence to see any jail time as a possible penalty provision. But in my experience, large commercial projects that are worth tens of millions of dollars that need to be finished by a certain date to avoid, you know, certain contractual penalties, contractors will push the limits and push the line, and you know, they will eat up a $300 a day fine. No problem if it comes down towards meeting the end of a project and they have liquidated damages that may be anywhere, you know, from single thousands of dollars to multiple tens of thousands of dollars for delayed completion on a project. And so, you know, I'll go back to my earlier comments. you know, genuinely, the city of Livingston has no intention of ever using the jail penalty provision on any of our. Certainly. and
Yeah,
it's
you're,
important
stay quiet.
to- It's important to remember that not every member of the community has best intentions of the community in mind. And so having that penalty provision available is certainly something that I have found in my career has been helpful to being able to enforce the provisions of municipal codes.
That's really helpful context. Thank you. Okay, there's a couple other things. Oh, somebody brought up the highway, which is another interesting thing that I didn't think to bring up in my very beginning comment, but do we regulate, say, Harleys on the highway going through town?
As I indicated in the
Mhm.
section A5, so long as the vehicle has a muffler or other device to effectively prevent those noises, then no, we do not regulate that. And you know, I guess just to be clear, while Interstate 90 does bisect the town, it is actually not part of the town. That property is similar to the rail line or some others, and is not actually part of the city.
There's another question about the meaning of words, and I think this came up at a previous meeting when we were talking about another ordinance, I believe, like how do we define words in code? And so I just wanted to give Mr. Gager a chance to address that. I believe the terms were annoys and disturbs.
And so we do use the plain language definition. However, I will point out that section that was cited in public comment really is the purpose section. And then we do, or excuse me, the statement of purpose. And then we do go into section A, which is the enumeration of violations and all of the other components through section B, which is noise suppression plans, and section B, which are exceptions. And so, you know, while that is the kind of statement of policy or statement of purpose for this section of code, we do go on to enumerate those loud and unnecessary noises in section A.
There were just two other things. One is there was a very excellent comment about how there needs to be a code rewrite. I wanted to give Mr. Gager, which I think we've all agreed on at the front of this room, to share where the city's at on that astute comment.
Yes,
Go.
thank you, Chair Nudes. I will say that I certainly appreciated that comment perhaps more than any other, because I couldn't agree more with it. As we have discussed up here, there are many provisions of the Livingston Municipal Code which either conflict with other provisions or conflict with the growth policy, or in some cases, you know, create situations that were not envisioned by state code. And so I would offer to the community, please know that we understand that some of those incongruencies exist, and we are working to rectify them as quickly as we can. And that is an ongoing process. It will probably most easily be noticed in the upcoming review of the zoning code. That said, we do have some planned upcoming changes related to the parking ordinance and also the general provisions section chapter 2 of the municipal code coming up as well. So please do, I would offer if I could, Vice Chair Nudes, all of our meeting agendas and packets with all of the information are posted on our website on by the close of business on Thursday prior to a meeting. And so if any community members are interested to find out what the commission will talk about on the first or third Tuesday, please just tune into our website on the prior Thursday. And again, the full packet is up there by the close of business.
Can I just ask Mr. Gager one thing? Do we provide a copy to the library still as well? And do we have a copy inside City Hall that could be looked at?
I do believe that we are still providing a copy to the library, and yes, we do have a copy at City Hall.
Okay, I just That's what I thought, and I had that in my notes too, just to,
I believe I've.
since you
seen-
brought it up, yeah.
I believe I've seen the director carrying one around from time to time in the library.
So there's multiple ways to
Mhm.
view the agenda. Okay, thank you.
The last question is, one commenter talked about how their property has been plowed in by the city. Is there a good contact? Who should people reach out to if that happens to them?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I would encourage folks to call the city's Public Works Department. I see some members of the department here in the audience today, and specifically of the streets crew. And so I know they are passionate and dedicated employees that seek to help however they can. That said, if any member of the community feels that they are not achieving the resolution for any of their concerns, they are certainly welcome to call me 406-823-6000. Alternately, you are welcome to send me an email at citymanager@livingstonmontana.org.
I think that covers everything that I had written down. For clarifying questions from the public.
Any other commissioners, did we miss any questions that you caught from the public that needed to be answered?
That's how you got it.
Mr. Weaver, I will just give you that opportunity, because we were taking down some questions there too, so is there anything that we didn't address that you wanted to address?
So there was a question that I had written down related to the interplay of the noise ordinance and the operating hours of parks. And it is not the city's intention to modify the operating hours of parks as a result of this noise ordinance. And in fact, I would remind folks that earlier in the meeting, I pointed to the park exception. And so, you know, the activity in public parks generally is accepted from this as well. And then I also heard a comment related to officer safety. And I would just like every member of the community to know that officer safety and really all employee safety is my highest priority. And we would never send a city employee into a dangerous situation. That said, you know, having been here for, 15, almost 16 months or so, and managed code enforcement for a good portion of that time, our experience has been that again, like I said, community members really are very receptive to the education and the conversations that we have related to code enforcement. And we've had very few, if any, situations that really made any of our employees feel as though they were in any danger. So I do thank the community for that.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Does this extend to jointly owned property with the county?
Did you hear that
I'm sorry.
question?
Does this extend to jointly owned property with the county?
This covers all property that is within the city limits. And so we do have some jointly owned property. That said, the public operations are accepted from this, included in our list of exceptions. And so it does not impact, generally speaking, government property.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Lyons?
Are we deliberating now or just clarifying still?
What?
I have a clarifying question. Mr. Gager, you mentioned an interesting scenario in which a commercial construction interest can bear the cost of a fine. And so there's need for penalty greater than a fine to curb that. And I appreciate that example. I'm curious if there might be any other mechanisms through which like hours of construction activity can be regulated within the city that wouldn't be related to a noise ordinance. Can you envision any other way outside of a noise ordinance that the timing of construction activity could be regulated?
Well, Yes, I would say that there are very likely some aspects of parking and parking enforcement, which could be used as another mechanism. And then, when we issue a building permit, it is possible, I believe, for us to have the conversation with the contractor at the time of issuance of building permit. So I come from a community that had much more construction activity, and so we actually did require construction activity plans and construction management plans for all large projects like that. And so we don't currently have those elements in our municipal code, but they are things that we could work in there and start to require construction activity plans on projects above a certain size or of a certain type. That's another way I've seen it done.
Thank you.
Okay, any other clarifying questions?
Can the public be given the opportunity to ask some clarification on some blatantly false information?
No, public comments closed.
Convenient.
So I have a question that's a follow-up from Commissioner Lyons.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, this is going off of what Commissioner Lyons was asking. So in this scenario where there is a construction plan as a part of the administrative process, permitting process, is there enforcement that can happen through that permit? Or, I mean, I understand that they need to have plans, but it sounds like they're willing to violate those plans. So what might that look like if not through like a separate ordinance that has to do with noise or parking?
Well, we could, again, we don't currently have construction activity plans as part of our municipal code requirement. So in enacting such a requirement, we could include penalty provisions in that as well. Yes.
That's what I wasn't sure if that was a possibility. Thank you.
And just to carry that on, we do have penalty provisions in the zoning section of our code for not complying with that. So it is an area where we could levy penalties.
So it would be set up and passed through the commission, but then it would be an administrative process. It sounds like.
That's been my experience
Okay.
largely. Yeah, having the commission involved in approval of construction activity plans.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not our lane. Okay, I'm just like anticipating possible questions that people would be.
I just had one more clarifying question. Okay, upon receipt of citation, you have chance to take it before the city judge, correct?
That's correct.
And the city judge is the one that imposes a fine at that time.
That's correct.
Right, so we're not, I mean, the discretion is up to the judge. Once it goes that far, to how much to fine. Not to exceed $300 and not to exceed 6 months in jail. Okay, so just, so we're not arbitrary about this. I mean, it does go, through a judicial process. Thank you.
I believe they call that separation of powers.
Very good. Thank
That's a good question.
That was a good question. Other questions? All right, deliberation. Would like to go first?
Well, I was named 3 times.
Okay,
Oh, so
yeah, I
go
guess you do.
first.
I'm
You can
happy
go first.
I'm happy to be held accountable by the wonderful people of Livingston, who you never know if anybody actually listens to the meetings. And so it's like amazing.
Great.
I know, it makes me so happy. So that total validation. Thank you, Josh Congleton and Jolynn Jurdy and I believe Angela Devani as well. I think, one of the overall themes I heard was the time restriction. And the concerns about the 8 PM time particularly. It sounds like maybe some of the morning times with cars and snow blowers were covered in the things that Mr. Gager said in terms of like, yes, vehicles sometimes need to idle you know, when certain kinds of cars have to warm up in winter or snow blowers have to be run, but that's also directed by a city ordinance. But the nighttime hours were of special concern and that was a big theme. So I'd be interested if the commission would want to talk about particularly the 8 PM hour being edited. I think the conversation around jail is something to discuss as well. We've heard from the community and we've heard from Mr. Gager. So there's like, they're all like valid points. So what is the conversation at the commission level look like, considering the needs of the community members and the valid concerns of the community? And also, the large things potentially on the horizon that would actually infringe on private property rights of those residential neighborhoods when potential wealthy business owner or like very expensive construction project could afford to violate the rights of everyone in the neighborhood by not following a particular code, and then the city wouldn't be able to help the community at large. This is really about helping the public. I'd be interested especially in those two things. That's like how I would start.
Great.
Yeah, the biggest, and this is why we're here, to get the feedback, and it would have been nice 2 weeks ago if we could have started this process, but the time is upon us now. Yeah, I'm overwhelmingly, it seems like the time restrictions, especially in the evening, from going from 10 PM to 8 PM, people seem to find onerous. But that being said, we're not out looking for violations. This is to give people that have a legitimate complaint something to work with, you know. The ordinance is only as good as it's written and spelled out. I would not be, I would be in favor of putting it back at 10 PM. I don't find a problem with that, but I also don't see really people complaining at 8 o'clock and stuff like that. And then with fees and jail time, ordinance is only as good as the teeth that we put into it. You know, so we're not gonna have an enforcement, you know, of a fine or jail. I and see that's could be pretty heavy handed, but there again, you're going through the judicial part of the process with that. And yeah, who knows, you know, you could get a road judge and stuff like that, but you know, there's that risk with anything. So I'm inclined to leave it, you know, the fine, the fee and penalty of imprisonment in place, but I'm certainly open to changing it back to 10 PM. At least for now. I know we're gonna go back for it.
So yeah, I similarly have identified through the public comment issue with the timing. And I think that there haven't been a lot of comments outside of the time that existed in the original ordinance 10. When you think about it in terms of like a quiet time versus a less quiet time, the way that we have it written with 8 PM, it's actually more of the day is quiet time than less quiet time, which maybe seems a little excessive. So I would certainly personally be comfortable with changing that to 10. I think the one thing that I don't necessarily feel was adequately addressed with our questions has to do with downtown. And I think that you know the nightlife of Livingston is a part of kind of our identity. And I am worried that that potentially the decibel levels for the commercial, you know, if it were 60 decibels at 8 or at 10, that's in this table we saw, that's equivalent to a normal conversation. And that makes me a little concerned. Also, you know, the remedy that I heard from the city manager for things like music acts is the potential for a waiver. But again, I think that it might be pretty onerous for a bar to be doing waivers multiple times a week, every week, all year round. I think it's onerous on the business, potentially onerous on the business owner and onerous on the city administration as well. So one thing, you know, we're talking about these things kind of in their own categories of time,
location,
location, what noise level. But we can also think about it of maybe different times at different locations. You know, I actually haven't spent a lot of time on the bar scene in Livingston. But I used to spend a lot of time on the bar scene in other places. And, you know, maybe 10 o'clock. If we're talking about 10 o'clock, maybe that's not the right time in that location. So I'm maybe not in this turn at the table gonna offer a time, but maybe we can think about different times for different zones. And then finally, I heard a pretty resounding objection to the potential of jail time. And I understand that objection, and I think that it's possible that we could think of other mechanisms to avoid the circumstance that Mr. Gager was describing, other than the noise ordinance, simply because it's making our citizens nervous. And I think that's a legitimate concern, and I don't want to scare our citizens into thinking that being loud is going to send them to jail. So, you know, I appreciate that response of these potential alternative mechanisms, and I think that those might have a less kind of like citywide anxiety related to them. And so I would be interested in maybe exploring those other alternatives. I think that you mentioned the ladder of enforcement or something like that. And I think that, you know, if you read that language in the ordinance of not to exceed $300, that means that it's, you know, especially with the context that you provided, that doesn't mean that the first citation is going to be $300. And I trust enforcement and the professionals to kind of follow a reasonable schedule there. So I'm not particularly concerned by that up to $300, but I am not particularly comfortable with the potential jail time for a noise violation. I'll yield that.
Commissioner Willis?
Well, I feel it is crystal clear from the public that we are not hitting the mark. I agree with my commissioners that I like 10 o'clock, 10 to 7. We've been doing it for 100 and some odd years. And I also don't feel like the jail component is acceptable for a noise ordinance of this. That said, I also have been in the construction industry for a very long time, and I never did it, but it was always part of the math. What is what do we do? Pay the fines to get done a week early, because that could be $100,000. I feel we do have a different avenue to take as far as penalizing those types of infractions. But the ordinary 95th percentile resident of the city of Livingston is likely never to get anywhere near that. I do, however, think that the original ordinance that we have is unenforceable and ambiguous. And so that leaves a whole lot of petty behavior between neighbors. And it's just a judgment. What's too loud for somebody and what's irritating for another. I like the idea and I like the follow through with the decibel limits in the neighborhoods and the commercials. I think we should take one step at a time. And so let's start with these. And if we have a rash of infractions during either daylight or nighttime hours, then we know that we're maybe setting the bar too low, and we should probably readdress this. But without starting somewhere, then we're back to square zero, where we kind of have nothing. We don't actually have an enforceable ordinance at all. And that goes to what's the point of having it. So I would like to entertain the idea of doing 10 to 7, a stepped incremental penalty system without jail. And then we look into other avenues for penalizing the possibilities of people that would take advantage of that opening. Thank you. Are you?
Okay. So I have a few things. I agree, that we need to potentially reassess the timing in the evening. I also agree that the old ordinance is completely subjective and leaves a lot to the imagination on both sides of the coin. When we talk about downtown, I do think that Mr. Gager addressed that well, and I will remind us all that our downtown is not made up of just bars, and there are hotels downtown as well. I've heard from some hotel owners, they like their guests to be able to sleep. And so I think that we do have to strike a balance. I've worked in the downtown bar scene. I think that, if we adjusted the daytime and the nighttime hours to 10, it's gonna put 80 decibels in commercial at 10. Yeah, I know some of the bands go later than that, but all of the bands downtown play inside. And if they're playing outside, they need to get a permit.
Social permit.
So I think that's doable. My other concern a little bit with if our only penalty is $300. As an event planner, I will tell you that if I'm throwing an event and it's several thousand, hundreds of thousands of dollars of an event, a $300 fine is not gonna stop me from going all night long. So I think that jail time, maybe that's not where we need to be, but maybe we do need to address what those penalties might be.
Perhaps that could be part of the special exemption
Mhm.
is these enhanced fines and fees for jails.
Because I just think $300 is not gonna stop somebody from.
Can we take another round?
Yes, I absolutely will. So yes, we are gonna do another round. But let me just look at my notes one more time before I yield. Okay. Yeah, I'm ready for another round. Those are my thoughts anyway, as this first round rolls through, but I think that we're hearing a lot of agreement here, but. Vice Chair Newt.
So one of the things was like, what does industrial noise actually sound like? I will share that Montana DEQ estimated, this is for the Laurel Generating Station. It's a power plant from Northwestern Energy. I don't know where it's at in the process of being built right now, but they had estimated that the noise from that plant would be 65 decibels from 600, I think it's feet away. And that came from Montana DEQ. So let me just double check the. Yeah. So 65. Yep, 600 feet away. And like recognizing that like most industrial facilities are not like right at the property edge. They're like typically deeper inside a property. I'm sure there's exceptions, but I think if we're talking about RY timber, that it's not right next to the property edge. So I would just share that information. Also, I just want to name that we're talking like that people are bringing up private property rights to be able to like have barbecues or parties outside at night, but I also want to just name that there's also people that have private property rights to not be disturbed in their homes at night. So that's kind of like when someone asks, how did we start this conversation as a commission? To me, that's kind of where the conversation was starting, because we have these residential neighborhoods right up next to the central business district. And the residential neighborhoods existed before the central business district expanded and before the uses, the special exceptions that we allowed expanded. So those people that are adjacent to those special exceptions that the commission approved also have private property rights. And that's also like how this conversation began. If we were allowing a special exception, what did it mean for those people who had valuable property rights also to do something different that might not have been a compatible use or would have been an unknown use when they brought their property? And that happened at the Shane Center conversation. That's where it began, because it's an outdoor venue. They were talking about 999 people being at events, and that is, as Angela pointed out, that is one of the places that we talked about it. But I would also go back in time and say that the chair previous to me, Chair Hoagland, had also talked about noise and noise ordinances. So that was a whole commission passed, 2 commissions passed. So there's been conversations around noise for quite some time at the commission level. And I can't even remember, Commissioner Schwartz might remember all the context of that. It was a long time ago, 5 years ago.
Brain cells too.
What's that?
And brain cells, no.
So I just want to like, just saying those things out loud. So I think everything that we heard tonight is valid and important. And also like the people that have private property rights and they're wanting to be able to like sit outside and not hear bands constantly in their backyard also have rights. And so I think that's our job, is to try to figure out that balance, but then also the balance of power. I appreciate the conversation around jail time, because balance of power with police and just government in general is a reasonable thing to be thinking about. It's really helpful to hear that we're not like wanting to throw everybody in jail, and also knowing that there are people that abuse power when they get it. That's real. But what Mr. Gager is saying is also valid. There could be a time when there's going to be a structure being built that's worth many, many millions of dollars in Livingston, and all that neighborhood is going to be impacted. A neighborhood that never had construction like that before. That's a very real possibility of happening very soon in Livingston. And what Chair Kale is saying is also true. I appreciate, because I know you've planned those events. That's part of your like professional work history. Thank you for being honest, that you would totally ignore the fine if you, if a bunch of money was on the line for events too. So I'm not sure like I'm just not sure. I would love to hear like what the commission says, because changing the construction plan does not address special events. And we know that in Livingston, there's very expensive events that happen that have nothing to do with construction. So how do we also protect public health and safety with noise and like private property rights when somebody very wealthy is able to afford violating the ordinances that the rest of us cannot afford to violate. I'm not sure, but I'm also in agreement too with the time. I just want to say, I think shifting the times, like other commissioners have said, is something that I would support. I think that's a pretty straightforward, a straightforward edit that we can make. Okay. That was like a lot. I yield.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Well, and it's gone. I did, follow this on social media, to a certain extent. And even a former police chief, admitted that, the current ordinance is, you know, almost unenforceable. Not that he agreed with what we're doing tonight, but he did say, you know, that they dealt with it, you know, as it came up, and, but, you know, it was, you know, the old ordinance was very vague, and, Commissioner Willa, brought up a, you know, good point, you know, at some point, we gotta start someplace. And, this text can always be amended as is obvious now. It does take time. It takes, you know, a month or month and a half to 2 months at least, you know, to change it. But, I think this is a good start. The penalty seems to be an issue as far as monetary. 300 sounds kind of cheap, but, that can be amended down the road. Along with, the threat of jail time too, for, you know, people that are egregious, you know, with this. So I think it's a good start. And, I'd be comfortable changing to 10 PM. Commercial, residential, and, industrial. I yield.
Mr. Lyons.
Mr. Gager, I think that you referenced like a different part of municipal code that the penalties are coming from. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, so we have included a reference to section 1-8 of the Livingston Municipal Code, which covers the general penalty provisions throughout the code.
And so we've, you know, I appreciate the discussion of laddered enforcement and also, you know, the use of reasonableness and discretion in applying these penalties. But, you know, I might I'm still uncomfortable with the jail time for noise ordinance violation. And, you know, at least within how this ordinance is written currently, I don't feel entirely confident that if someone charged with enforcing this is having a bad day, that they might not, you know, use the full strength of their enforcement capabilities. Kind of like maybe outside of how you would have chosen that for that specific incident. And so I'm curious if there, you know, if maybe I don't understand that section 8 correctly and that's all laid out, or if you can explain how I might be envisioning that cynically.
You know, as Commissioner Schwartz accurately pointed out, you know, the penalties that are ultimately assessed are determined by the city's municipal judge, who is an independently elected official. And so, you know, I'm reminded of a conversation totally unrelated to this one that I had last week with our paralegal. You know, the city from time to time does unfortunately have prosecution efforts And so we had a DUI. I believe that was the individual's fourth DUI last week. And that individual walked out with a stern warning from the judge, no penalty, no jail time. And so, I guess I would just point to judicial discretion, and it is wide-ranging and often wielded. And in my experience, we have a very fine municipal judge here, have a great relationship with her. But I think she is, in my observation, is especially sensitive to the burdens of the common person in the city of Livingston. And I don't think that we have a overly punitive judicial system here. So, you did make reference to what I would call kind of the bad actor theory, the employee who's having a bad day and writes a ticket. And I would just point out that our independently elected municipal judge is the backstop or the circuit breaker for that bad actor theory. And we do frequently have tickets. The chief will attest to that, that are written and adjudicated with no penalty. And so that is an avenue that exists.
I'll yield for now, thank you.
Commissioner Welch?
I think I've said everything that I could.
Okay. I don't think I have anything new to bring to the table.
There was one question there was something that Commissioner Welch brought up that I wonder if we could get clarification around.
Sure.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. You were talking about permits for special events and perhaps working in some sort of enforcement into the permit, I believe.
Yeah.
As a way to that missing spot where event people could potentially take advantage.
Yeah, it could be an event or a construction permit. Is that, if it's even possible.
That's what I'm wondering, is if it's even possible, because to me that seems, my curiosity around it is like, if it's an administrative process, I'm curious if that's even possible, because it seems to me that it would have to be uniform application of the law and not specific to certain permits. Like, we're gonna give you a bigger penalty than we're gonna give this other person. Just because you're
arbitrary, yeah.
construction.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it arbitrary, thank you, that's the word.
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious, like, if that's even a possibility. I mean, I appreciate, like, I like thinking outside the box and seeing what we can do, but I'm wondering if it's even possible.
It sure seems like that would probably get us into a little bit of legal hot water, but I'd defer to the city attorney on that one.
Yeah, the statutes, these statutes govern the violation of municipal codes. The maximum penalty is $500 or 6 months in jail or both, right? These are all misdemeanors. So you would not be able to create some type of penalty provision that would exceed that.
Or that would be specifically applied to one applicant and a different thing applied to a different applicant.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay, that's what it is.
Can I ask?
What about any applicant?
No, you wouldn't be able to carve out exceptions like that.
I also think that would probably just not give us flexibility. I mean, I think events that I'm talking about are gonna be, could potentially be few and far between, and they're probably somebody who's coming here to do one event and one event only. I don't see this being somebody who wants to have events like the Shane Center over and over again, who want to be good neighbors with the city. Like, I don't see that as the issue, but I see, potentially large events coming in and doing something and being like, well, we're only here one day.
Right.
But then from what our attorney said, if we then said, well, we're just gonna, as we've had this discussion, $300 would be the fine, we're removing the jail time. Can we even do that? As you said, like, this is how our
Well,
code
yeah,
is, or
yeah, you can
the law.
create something with a lesser penalty. You can't create something that exceeds the 500 or 6 months or both.
So we couldn't say like, it's gonna be $500 to $1,000 and no jail time.
No, you can't do that. And this is a little bit different situation. For instance, like in the sign codes, we have a $300 penalty and it accrues at X number of, you don't cure the deficiency that it accrues at a certain rate per day. This is not something you can do because it's typically a noise event is a one-time situation, so. And so it's you're stuck with something that's similar to what's in the draft.
Would, kind of on that same line, so if we had a bad actor that came and had an event, got the permit, they were a bad actor, does that give us the ability to refuse a permit to that bad actor if they apply again?
Yes, the city has discretionary authority in granting permits.
I feel the- Yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I felt like it was all piggybacking. Thank you. I think one of the challenges with, well, any policy, but this one in particular, and I appreciate Commissioner Schwartz, you bringing up like the judicial branch, is we can't possibly put every specific thing in the policy about how the executive branch will administer the law. And so just like, we don't like say, oh, police, like you must give tickets for this much speeding over the limit and not that much speeding over the limit. Like that's just like too much for the legislative branch to do. We have to like also recognize the administrative branch has their own power to like administer the law. And government was designed that way on purpose, right? So that we wouldn't end up with 5 monarchs, like deciding all the things about Livingston all the time. So we're gonna have to like figure out the balance, and it's not gonna be perfect because it can't be, because that's what balance of power is. And if like, we're talking about some edits tonight, and if it goes forward and the law isn't being administered in a way, right, that's like reflective of like the public interest, then we could like revise the law like we do with all these other codes that were mentioned tonight. The other codes that need to be updated that are unrelated. So, I just think it's important to name that because we could deliberate for like 5 hours and not get anywhere. And realizing that like judicial and executive have very different powers, and we have to be careful to like also just stay over here in the policy world. I yield.
For the record, I received 4 emails addressed specifically to me that need to enter into the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Schwartz.
I have nothing else. I yield.
I'm gonna ask pretty much the same question I asked before. Mr. Gager, I think now we've identified 2 specific scenarios in which we're worried that a strictly fine penalty will not be sufficient to dissuade that activity. So those were some kind of large event, but that large event would require a special permit, correct? And then Chair Kale kind of identified that maybe an avenue for stopping that kind of behaviors, then we then have discretion on those permits in the future. So I see that as a potential kind of strong tool for dissuading that bad activity. And then Mr. Gager, you provided, so I guess maybe this isn't a question, I'm just reasoning out loud. But you provided a potential avenue for regulating or avoiding that other scenario of construction activity kind of accepting a fine and choosing to continue, a disturbing kind of, pattern. With those mechanisms, I feel pretty confident that we have those two scenarios that we can envision relatively well taken care of. To me, that gives me more comfort in avoiding the possibility of jail or a noise violation. So I personally, with those two mechanisms, feel comfortable removing, or I would prefer to remove the jail penalty from the noise ordinance. I think we all agree that on the time that we're comfortable amending the time. And the thing that's left outstanding for me is the jail penalty. So.
I'm gonna ask one more question. So we have, right now, it says shall be fined not exceeding $300 or by imprisonment of more than 6 months. I'm hearing a lot of people feel like, on the commission, I'm sort of trying to synthesize all this. That the jail penalty seems too much. $300 is the highest that we could go monetarily. We could not go to $500, or does that $500 sit in the?
We can go to $500.
Just can't exceed it.
Can't to not exceed 500. I would make a suggestion to the commission, because I feel like we're getting there. That we would change the times as mentioned, so changing daylight hours to be from 7 AM to 10 PM. That's what I'm hearing. And I would make the suggestion that we remove the imprisonment and say shall be fined not exceeding $500.
I could live with that. In lieu of jail time.
That would,
I have a question.
yes.
So we're implicitly saying that we want to open up a conversation about, administrative process of construction timelines. What is, Mr. Gager, what did you call it?
A construction activity plan or a construction management plan.
So who would that apply to?
That would be to be determined in the ordinance that would be brought back to you
Could
folks
be-
that would enable that.
Could be everybody from building putting a porch on their house to the $40 million structure.
That would be for your commission
Okay.
determination.
So just recognizing that this policy, this thing could open up a door to a whole nother thing, right? So it's like the implications of one policy and how that impacts other policy and staff time and a whole nother industry. Like another layer on top of that same industry. And like, how does that fit with the rest of our timelines of everything we're trying to do as a commission this year, which is a lot? I'm just curious, like, what you all think of that, like how that plays in, because it's gonna be another big conversation. It's a new thing, gonna impact a whole industry, everybody from potentially any of us to our neighbors to like big developers. And take some more administrative time.
Can I respond?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm just thinking.
So, we're having this discussion largely because of new developments. By developments, I mean changes.
Yeah.
In our urban fabric. And so those changes kind of pointed out a need to address some shortcomings in our policy. And, that happened many, many months ago, but here we are. Fortunately, the way that timing worked is we're actually kind of preempting maybe potential problems before something has actually manifestly changed. I trust that Mr. Gager has has a great pulse on what's going on in our community and what the changing policy needs might be. And so we're saying, okay, there might be other mechanisms for regulating or incentivizing better behavior. In these specific scenarios that we've envisioned. That may come up at any time, you know, we can't necessarily predict when that's gonna be a need. But I think with this policy, we're demonstrating that we can adjust our policy in response to a changing community need. And so and this policy really is related to a specific community need of regulating and ensuring that folks at their homes are experiencing a reasonable level of noise. These other scenarios can be regulated in other ways and aren't necessarily like happening this summer. I mean, they might be, but we don't know that they're happening this summer. So I would suggest that this is an example of our policy, like responding to those changing needs in our community. And so maybe getting the policy imperfect and potentially in a way that's like really out of step with what we're hearing, kind of the sentiment of the community is, just to kind of preempt another need might not be like the appropriate way to design policy.
That's super helpful, thank you. I mean, I'm up for it if the rest of you are, not knowing what's gonna come, obviously, it's gonna be a wild ride.
I mean, I don't think, we didn't hear any community members saying like, we need jail to
Yeah.
regulate.
Right, yeah,
Noise.
right.
And I don't think there's like a huge appetite for that up here either. So.
Yeah.
Right, I don't think so either.
So I just think that there's like a better way for us to avoid those specific cases that we're worried about.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Lyons, and I'm always thinking too about like every time we say yes to something as a commission, having been up here for a minute, how there's like a whole cascade of impacts and like how long it takes to get things worked on, given the huge amount of work we've been doing ever since the growth policy, which takes up most of the space in the room, always. So thank you for that. I'm on board with the suggestions.
Would somebody, so if we're there, we'll need an amendment. Do you?
You made the original motion.
Would
you
you-
wanna-
Yeah, I'm happy to,
Okay,
I'm happy to be of service. I just need to get to the right page, just a second.
No, that's right, you can't read this. 90 minutes. If you want my page, you can have it.
I'm gonna click on the hyperlink that the awesome whoever staff person, probably our city clerk, put in. Thanks, city clerk.
Oh, that's cool.
I know, right?
Nice to know.
technology.
All these techies working for the city.
Whoa.
It doesn't work on paper.
No. But I don't like scrolling through, man, like 300 pages, I'm trying to find.
If I may,
Yeah.
I would like to ask Mr. Gager for some input on potential amendments, so. Just to like keep the meeting moving along at a more reasonable pace. Do you have suggestions on the amendment? I'll just ask you directly.
I do. Listening to the conversation, it occurs to me that we're really looking at two possible amendments. So I think one would be within section C exceptions, changing all references to 8 PM to be 10 PM. And I just looked through the ordinance. Section C is the only area where we have references to 8 PM, so that should eliminate any confusion there. And then within section D, stipulating that the maximum penalty shall not exceed $500 and not include imprisonment.
Mr. Gager, also on page 105, there's reference to the times as well in that the zones.
Excellent. Thank you. Good correction, Commissioner. Apologize for the oversight there.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, in section A9 and then all of section C, replacing references of 8 PM to 10 PM.
I'll say it, but I won't write it down. Will you be able to write it down?
I think, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Are we ready? Are
Yeah.
you ready?
Are you ready, Mr. Gager?
I certainly am.
Okay.
So I'm gonna make a motion to amend section A9 to change the time to 8 PM to 10 PM. And also section C, changing the 8 PM time to 10 PM. And also section D penalties, changing shall be fined not exceeding $300 to shall be fined not exceeding $500. And omitting the clause or by imprisonment for not more than 6 months. And omitting the other part, the subsequent part about imprisonment. Does that motion work for you?
It does.
Second.
One second, please.
I'm empathetic.
Okay. So we have a motion, an amended motion by Newt and a second by Lyons. I'm going to just check in with Commissioner, with Mr. Gager. Thank you, to make sure my process is correct. We'll vote on the amendment first, correct? And then we will vote on the original motion.
As may be potentially amended
As
by
may-
the amendment.
right,
that
okay.
passes.
So we'll start with the amendment. Are we ready to vote? Okay, so Mr. Gager, would you please call roll call on the amendment made by Vice Chair Newt?
Chair Kell,
4.
Vice Chair Newt,
4.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Lyons, 4, Commissioner Willich, 4.
Okay. So now we will vote on the original motion. And if
The amended motion.
As amended.
as amended, okay, so we will vote on the original motion as amended. So if we vote that through, then those amendments will be made to that original motion. Okay,
And passed.
if it's passed. Okay, we are now gonna vote on the original motion as amended. Roll call, please.
Chair Kell,
4.
Vice Chair Newt,
4.
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Lyons, 4, Commissioner Willich, 4.
Motion passes.
Mm-hmm.
And then could I get a motion? Yes, I'm right there with you. Can I get a motion for a break, please?
So.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so motion by Schwartz, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 8:55.
I will read it and stop the.
Okay, so we're gonna call back to order this meeting, the Livingston City Commission. My clock says 8:56 PM. We have one more action item this evening. And that is agreement 20067 with Four Ranges Community Recreation Foundation, Inc. for lease of Katie Bonnell Park. Mr. Gager.
Thank you, Chair Kale. The item before you this evening is a proposed lease with the Four Ranges Community Recreation Foundation, Inc. for the property known as Katie Bonnell Park. And as we have discussed in previous meetings, the Four Ranges Foundation is fundraising for a wellness center. And on March 19th, the community will have the opportunity to cast their ballots either in opposition or in support of the creation of a recreation district that would fund the operations of the wellness center. And as a reminder to community members who may or may not be aware, the creation of the district was a condition of at least one of the gifts to fund the project. And so that is why we are pursuing that. And so the agreement before you is in preparation for the election on March 19. And because we do not know whether that will be successful, the agreement has been structured to be contingent upon successful passage of the referendum question. And if the referendum is successful, it is my hope to have several mechanisms, pieces in place so that the project can proceed apace. And so the first order of business really is the lease agreement with Four Ranges for the property. Again, if the referendum is successful, and what the agreement that is before you would do is provide the foundation with control of the park through the design and construction of the project. And additionally, if new market tax credits are utilized to fund the project, the contract would give the foundation control of the park for a period of 7 years. And that is a requirement of the new market tax credit program, that they have care and control of the property for that time. And largely the reason is because as a government entity, we are not able to receive tax credits or benefit from those. And so they need to be provided to private entities. And if, again, the new market tax credits are utilized, the foundation will control the property for 7 years after the completion of construction. However, included in the agreement is a provision that the foundation will lease the property, including all of the improvements, back to the city for our exclusive use and enjoyment during that 7-year holding period. And at the end of the 7-year holding period, the property and improvements would revert to city control, and the property would always be owned by the city, but the improvements would then also be owned by the city. And so I believe that is a summary. I just, as preparation, I do expect between now and election day to bring potentially at least one lease agreement, potentially more, before you for some other land if the project is successful. And we've discussed adjacent property owners that have expressed a desire to participate and support the project. So those may come before you, but this first step of providing the foundation care and control of Katie Bunnell Park, if the referendum is successful, is before you this evening. So I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioners, clarifying questions?
None for me.
I have a quick question.
Vice Chair Newt?
So you said this is a contract to give care and control to Four Ranges, yeah,
Of the parkland.
of the
yes.
parkland? And then you said that they would lease it back to us?
If the new market tax credits are utilized and
Right.
they need that 7-year holding period, we will enter into a lease that would cover that 7-year period.
Just anticipating, do you know the cost of that lease, like what?
$1 per year is our
Okay.
expectation.
Thank
yes.
you. That's my only question.
Others? And if the new market tax credits aren't used, the property would be given back to us at the end of the construction
That's correct.
period, right? Okay. Make it clear for the public.
Mhm.
Other questions? Okay. We'll continue in the manner that we have, so I'd entertain a motion and then we can open it up to public comment.
I make a motion to approve agreement 20067 for Ranges Community Recreation Foundation Incorporated and authorize the chair to sign.
Motion by Schwartz,
I second.
okay. Motion by Schwartz, second by Willich. So let's go ahead and open it up to public comment. we'll start in the room. Is there anybody in the room that would like to make public comment on agreement 20067? Come on up.
So I'm Jessie King again.
Thank you.
I have some questions. So the idea is that we lease the land to Four Range. I'm terrible with remembering names, so what kind of financial repercussions for the community is involved with this process? Either in the first 7 years or the following time period? And yeah, I think that's my question.
Okay. Do you have any other questions or that's?
Yeah, I think that's my question.
That's your question? Okay, thank you. We will come back to that, I promise. Okay. Anyone else in the room?
Right, I am sitting at least. Lewis. I just had a question about, there's been a lot of speculation about what services or what service providers or who might be ultimately taking up that space. It would occur to me that during the construction period, a lot of that would be, it would be taken into consideration who would be taking the space and what accommodations they were creating for them. And is that an open process still, or is that something that would be completely at the discretion of the contractor?
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else in the room? All right, I'm seeing no more comment in the room, so we'll go online. If you would like to make a comment on agreement 20067, please raise your hand. Or go ahead and take yourself off mute and give us your name.
Patricia Grabo.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Okay, I just want to just be in support, just say my tremendous support for this lease and for the use of the Katie Bonnell Park. I think that was such a remarkably smart move on the part of the city. I do have one question, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, so you can not answer it if it's not. When we build this thing, will it be of this number of lanes we need for tournaments, for swim meets from across the state? I think that's a big thing people who have businesses in town want to know, because tournaments are our lifeblood. So thank you. I'm just so supportive of this.
Thank you, Patricia. Anyone else online? Feel free to come off mute and state your name.
Hey, it's Angela Devani.
Go ahead, Angela.
So I'm curious about the agreement that the original person who donated this land to the city, if the city has researched stipulations about that land, because I know based on information I received from a descendant of that person, that she specified she wanted it to be a park for the kids in that area. And secondly, and I know this really doesn't have anything to do with the agreement, but just out of curiosity, is the playground getting torn down to accommodate the wellness center? And will there be any memorialization of the Katie Bonnell name, since we're leasing this park to Four Ranges potentially? Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Any other comments from folks online? Stacy, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah. Stacy Jovic, 410 South 8th. I'm just in support of this agreement and just hope that things can move forward. So that's all.
Thank you, Stacy. Anyone else? I'll ask one more time. Anyone else online? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment for action item C, agreement 20067. Why don't we start, if it's okay with the commissioners, with some of the questions we heard from the public, and I'll ask you to back me up if I missed anything. I think the first one we heard, Mr. Gager, is are there any financial repercussions to the city within this lease, or what that looks like?
It's a excellent question. And so the lease, the agreement actually stipulates very clearly that Four Ranges has total financial responsibility for the design and construction of the facility. And also a prior agreement stipulated that they're responsible for the costs of conducting the special election as well, March 19th. And so to the extent that the district is approved by electors at the question on the 19th, the city expects that we will, upon substantial completion of the building, the city will begin to levy assessments on property, not to exceed 30 mils, with the intent of raising 1.1 million to help fund the operations. And so that is certainly a financial repercussion. And that 1.1 million is expected to fund the operations of the wellness center when added with user fees from certain users that are outside of the district. And then also within a prior agreement with the foundation, they have a responsibility to raise a $5 million endowment that would also help support operations of the wellness center. And I will note that the city does have statutory restrictions on increasing the revenue from property taxes, just as we do on our normal property tax. And so those same restrictions apply. Can't grow by more than half the rate of inflation observed over the prior 3 years. And so those, in my mind, are the primary financial repercussions of the project if it moves forward.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. What about like liability costs of changing hands? Like if something were to happen in construction?
So that's a fantastic question. A function of this agreement, and it's very common in the construction industry, but the foundation will be required either themselves personally or for their contractor to take out a builder's risk policy for work on the site. And so to the extent that there's any damage during construction, that's all covered by the foundation and their builder's risk policy.
So the city and taxpayers would be financially okay in that situation? Okay.
And I feel like I read in here that they have to name the city as a insured.
Yeah,
Yep.
An additional insured, yeah.
They do, and actually also if for whatever reason they fail to perform, we actually have the right to step in and self-perform the work using the money that they've raised.
Okay. Thank you. There was a question about who will be managing the space, running the space?
The City of Livingston Recreation Department will be the manager of the property when it opens.
And hold that space as recreation space.
Exactly, yes. And I guess the follow-on question there, as far as outside providers that may utilize the space for different wellness needs, because the city would either have control of the property outright if new market tax credits are not used, or would have an exclusive operating agreement if new market tax credits are used. The determination of what providers utilize the space would ultimately be made by the city and not by the foundation.
And therefore it would be required to be an open public process.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Let's see. were there, and we're getting a little far off of the actual agreement, but I think it's good to answer some of these questions. There's a question about stipulations from the property, that we own the gift of the Katie Bunnell Park was to the city. Are there any stipulations on that would preclude us from doing this agreement?
There are no deed restrictions imposed upon the land, and with regards to the existing playground equipment, including the basketball court that is out there, it is the goal of the city and the foundation to place all of that equipment back on the property upon completion. And I think I've made reference in past conversations that while Katie Bunnell Park is currently 1.8 acres, we are working with adjacent landowners to acquire lands that may ultimately come to total approximately 5 acres on the site. And so I think I can fairly safely say it is the city's goal and plan to actually expand the current Katie Bunnell Park and the assets and the resources, recreational amenities that exist within the park. And the park itself will continue to be free for public use. As we've discussed, the wellness center facility would also be available for use by members, residents, and property owners within the district, free of charge for kind of those non-programmed events, kind of open gym, open swim, the walking, use of the fitness center. All of that is free of charge. And so, with the final question there, which was the permanent memorialization of Ms. Bunnell's name on the park, I would offer that has already been accomplished by the city commission, and the naming of parks is the responsibility of the city commission, and it will be named Katie Bunnell Park until such time as the Livingston City Commission determines otherwise.
Thank you. Last question. This one's kind of far off topic, but will the pool be big enough for swimming tournaments?
It is my understanding that the pool will contain either 6 or 8 lanes in the competitive 25-yard lap swimming pool. The determination of whether 6 or 8 lanes are completed, I think is going to be made in the coming months as fundraising wraps up.
I didn't see any.
Okay. Commissioner deliberation. Commissioner Welch.
I have one item that I would like to see added to the general responsibilities 2.1 project building committee. The 3 individuals keeping tabs on all of that is a fiduciary responsibility for the city as well. So I think that would be an addition to the list of people to go for the committee.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Just gonna respond to that. As far as the building is concerned, that's being paid for entirely by
By the 4 ranges.
by the 4 ranges, and that is all
It's under the purview, I guess. Yeah.
the word I'm looking for is like that's all that money has been donated by benefactors in the 4 ranges. So there's no city money that's going into the construction of the.
No, but it is a capital project. And so eventually it will be the city's. And so I'd like to see a city finance person have at least one eyeball on it during its budget. I mean, when we talk about this thing, we have project programming, design and cost estimate budget, and then over here, funding, develop and approved budget. So I think it just makes good sense for the city to have their finance director be sitting at the table at least.
Gotcha. The word I was looking for was philanthropic.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I hear you, Commissioner.
I yield. That's the only thing I can do.
Commissioner Williams,
I just wanted to respond to that.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Yeah, I think that should be up to the city manager as far as, directing personnel what to do. And I'm sure if he deems it necessary that, a finance director get involved, he will do so, but there again, we don't control this money. We have no control over it. It's strictly up to the four ranges, so. And all I have to say on that, I yield.
Vice Chair Newt?
Yeah, I actually have a question for Mr. Gager. I'll wait until it's.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, it's okay. I actually have there's two thoughts on the topic of the director, but could you pull up, I just need a reminder, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot and have you look up something, but I'm looking for state code on city manager, form of government.
Yes. Is there a specific place that we can?
I'm trying to remember, is it like
Here I go.
the city manager, city commission, is it like number 43 is
So
standing out to me.
If we actually.
There we
believe it or
go,
not,
commissioner,
yeah,
manager,
we
form.
exist under part 3. And so.
Yep,
I
I'm
guess
looking for that,
under
duties of city
or
manager.
employees' duties, yeah. And so if I could just take a moment to share the screen with the public, I will.
Yes, please.
I'll-
And then there's a couple parts I was thinking of.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if it's here. So this is set up state law. So one part is there should be a part about department heads. Is that like in the
Number 4.
direct, supervise and administer all departments, agencies and offices of local government. Unit except as otherwise provided by law or ordinance. And then the other number that stands out to me is number 9, execute bonds, notes, contracts, and written obligations of the commission subject to the approval of the commission. So, I always think of there being like 3 or 4, and there's many more than 3 or 4 things that the city manager does, but one is in charge of all staff. Another is, right, agendas, and another is contracts. There's other things besides that, but I always think that is the big 3. And so I think it would be out of our lane, speaking of separation of powers, to direct any staff person other than the city manager. And also, the city manager is the one that administers contracts. And also, with all due respect to all the staff in the city, no one has as much finance education in the city of Livingston staff as Mr. Gager. Because we've seen his resume, at least. I think it was available, at least 4 of the 5 of us sitting here have seen his resume. So no one has as much finance experience and education as Mr. Gager. So I'm not inclined to cross the line into the executive branch's role. I yield.
And I will piggyback off of what you just said, Vice Chair Newt. We also know that Mr. Gager has an excessive a large resume.
Excessive. Sometimes it feels like too much.
Sorry. But his resume also contains very large capital projects, and that was one of the reasons that he was also brought to the table and hired, was his experience with large capital projects. It makes me nervous, dipping our toe into areas that we shouldn't be, and that potentially could be one. That certainly could be one, and I have every confidence in Mr. Gager that if he needs the finance director, he would bring her in. I think also, you don't need to bring it back up, but I think one of the last bullet points of the city manager was to appoint folks to advisory boards, or committees, which I also feel this is one of those things. Appoint members of temporary advisory committees. So I think, while I understand, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think it's something really good to think about. I think I would agree with the rest of you that Mr. Day just got it. That's what I have to say. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Willett, or?
I leave it up to Mr. Gager if he wants to bring the finance director along and add that person to the list or not. I'm not directing that person in. I'm just saying that Mr. Gager finds it appropriate to add, or this commissioner would find it to be beneficial to the project and to the city.
Mr. Gager.
I appreciate the feedback from the commission, and you know, as the project develops, I'm sure the finance director and I will have some conversations on the project. And, you know, she may become more involved, but you know, at this point, I'll follow the direction of the commission, and the project building committee will be myself, the recreation director, and the board chair, if this agreement's approved.
Okay. Anything else? Vice Chair News?
We're 2 for 2 with meetings talking about directing department heads, so I really think we need to like be thoughtful about what our lane is. And that's all I have to say about that.
Anything else?
Nothing for me.
I will also just remind everyone that we all have a learning curve. So, let's be thoughtful about that.
Thank you.
That comes with experience
Mhm.
and having lived it a few times, yeah.
You two have lived it way longer than the rest of us, and the rest of us are still trying to catch up. So I would.
It's, I'll just say like, going through enough trainings with the local government center, I think it's a very expensive mistake to make. It's my understanding it happens around Montana. And it's pretty detrimental to local government. And it could take a long time to recover from. So I do want to have patience, and also at the same time, I do want to be really careful, because it would be a very expensive mistake for us to make in a lot of ways, not just financially.
I think, and I will just add that I appreciate every one of us on this commission, and all 5 of us are here for a reason. To help catch those things, right? Or to offer suggestions that one of us maybe didn't think of. So I appreciate every one of you that sits on this commission and what you bring to the table. And I think that as a team, we do incredible work. So. Are we ready to vote?
I am,
Any more
sure.
discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Chair Kale,
4.
Vice Chair News,
4.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Or
Commissioner Lyons, Commissioner Willich.
4.
Motion carries. Okay. Okay, so can I have a motion to extend because we're at 9:30?
Make a motion to extend.
Second.
Okay, so motion to extend. Sorry, by Schwartz and a second by Newt. Okay, so with that being done. We are now gonna go into a closed session, so we're gonna close this meeting pursuant to 2-3-2034B to discuss litigation strategy. You have to clear the room.
Do you have to make a motion for that?
Oh, do I need to make a motion for that? Okay, so let's do that. Can I have I guess I will make a motion to close session. To the closed session, thank you, to pursuant 2-3-2044B to discuss litigation strategy, sorry.
Second.
Okay, so. Motion by Tail, second. By Newts, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion carries. So we are gonna clear the room. We will come back to close the meeting out. And have any comments at the end, but we do have to ask folks to leave, and anybody online, we're gonna put you into the waiting room. And we'll bring you back in line into the room afterwards.
Start the record.
Okay, we're on mute. Okay, so we are coming back into open session at 9:59. And so we will finish up our meeting, and next on the agenda is city manager comments, Mr. Gager.
Thank you, commissioners. Given the late hour, I will keep my comments brief, and I would just like to honestly thank the community for coming out tonight. Nice to see a full room, and not every night that we get 25 public commenters on an item. So thank you, community, and thank you, commission. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Commissioner Willich.
I would like to also thank the community for coming out en masse and making their wishes known. That's how we know. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons.
I'm gonna thank my fellow commissioners. I think that we try really hard to kind of balance the will of our community with our understanding of how these policy decisions will affect those sentiments and other connected issues. And I really appreciate just the careful nature that this commission takes to making these decisions. So, I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Schwartz.
Echo those sentiments as well. It was good, robust, conversation for the most part. With the emails and stuff, they were very respectful. And, I respond always to respectful emails, and I'll get back to you. One thing salt being used on city properties like City Hall and the rec center, as opposed to sand. Is there any way we can encourage the use of sand instead of salt, just because salt, first of all, when it's cold, becomes ineffective and actually becomes more dangerous. It's slippery. And it was very slippery at the with the blown in snow and the salt at the Civic Center Saturday. And it pits the concrete, pollutes our water,
Bad for your dog.
yeah, it just, salt gets tracked in people say, well, they'll track in sand, well, you track in the salt too as well. And actually, the church I belong to, we banned the salt too, because what it was doing to the concrete. And, it's just as easy to vacuum up as salt and stuff. So, in the future, if we could look at, getting away from salt and going to sand. I use sand at home and it works great, blows away, but you gotta put it back on. But, coming from, Chicago area and salt, I mean, just, oh God, it's in the air, man. You can taste it. I just, I don't want to be like that here. Thank you. I yield. And by the way, good job tonight, Mr. Gager. Outstanding, preparation and, delivery. So thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Forrest. Vice Chair Newt?
Yeah, I was thinking similar thoughts as everyone else tonight. I appreciate Commissioner Lyons, you talking about careful consideration. I like that wording. I think that is what we try to do. Really, and it's been like an evolution of the commission to watch it become more deliberate, more careful over the years.
Yeah.
So it's very
I
cool.
agree.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and thank you, Mr. Gager. Also, yes, like so much background information to know going back. I appreciate also that when we're in difficult deliberations that just like you're really respectful of the commission and you answer our questions, but it never feels like you're trying to like sway us one way or the other. I really feel like you're just giving us information and allowing us to do what we're supposed to be able to do, and that's move policy how we want to move it. So thank you for that, because I'm aware that it's not like that with all city managers. But, Chair Kale, I was messing up your the C and the K. Good job tonight.
Thank you.
I'm aware of like how exhausting giant meetings are because you're watching 100 other people in addition to trying to tend to the four of us and the city manager. You did a good job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for doing a good job.
Thank you.
And also to the public, it really is better when people come because like we made changes that we wouldn't have made otherwise. And I think it's a better policy for it. So I know people, misinformation goes around. It's very personal to everyone because this is our community. So it's personal and people have a lot of feelings, and that's good that people feel about Livingston. Thank you for coming and like getting facts and information. And then like believing the city manager when he shared the facts and sitting with us respectfully through the deliberation and allowing us to like change the policy in a way that was reflective of what we heard tonight. I think that it would be fantastic if we always had 100 people or however many it was between in-person online, show up and guide our policy. So thank you to the public. That's it.
Thank you. I'll just say thank you to Mr. Gager and my fellow commissioners for the good discussion and preparation and answering your questions. I think the public too, we had a lot of comment tonight and everybody kept it very civil and respectful, and I really appreciate that. And I know the commissioners do as well. It allows us to hear from you and hear everything that you need to say, and gives us the opportunity to then deliberate. So thank you for all of that. And I'm laughing when you said you switched up the C and the K. When I see Chair Kale everywhere, I think my name is spelled wrong because my name is Chair Kale. And I'm like, it's not KK. Why is it CK? Wait, there was a mistake. So I also did that, and we're silly. So right, because I've been but yes, I've been having that like. That's funny. So anyway, thank you all. And can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Lyons and a second by Schwartz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This Livingston City Commission meeting is closed at 10:06 p.m. on February 20th. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
It was time for a bell.
Thank you for coming.